Afternoon, members. Please be upstanding for the chairman.
We're on agenda item 9, Executive Report, Key Issues and Activities. As set out in the Constitution, the leader has provided an executive report. The leader will move the receipt of the report for noting and make a short statement introducing it. The report will be seconded by the deputy leader who will do so without speaking to it. No other member may speak on this item and no amendment can be tabled. Councillor Ben Bradley.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm sure members have heard quite enough of my voice, so I'll keep it relatively brief in the interest of us all getting home for tea. Can I first congratulate you on your year as Chairman? I know it's your last meeting, as we've touched on, and I wanted to take the opportunity to do that. The amount of money that you've raised in support of a fantastic cause and support of some people who really need that help and support, I think, is commendable. And I think you have massively shown the council in a very positive light over the course of your years. I'm very grateful for that, as well as managing this rabble as effectively as anybody could. So
I represent that remark.
Congratulations to you. Yes, Keith, you do represent that remark. So in terms of the executive report, largely self-explanatory. A number of very interesting visits that I've been on over the course of the last month or two, notably to Nottingham College, where I discovered for the first time through our engagement in the skills conversation about devolution, some of the amazing world-leading work they do in auto engineering there. So much of which I can't even tell you about because it's super secret, which is exciting in itself. And some of the world-leading things that we do across our FE network around the city and county are really fantastic. We've had George Freeman, the Science Minister, come to visit us at the STEP Fusion site, where they launched UK Industrial Fusion Solutions, which is the private sector arm of fusion investment in the country, helping us to attract inward investment from around the world into North Nottinghamshire, which again is a very exciting step forward. And over the course of the coming months now, we've got a partnership in place chaired by Sir John Peace. We will start to work with those partners to master plan the site, what kinds of things we'd like to see, what kind of infrastructure we'd like to bring forward. And over the course of the next year or so, one of the first developments will be a skills academy around fusion energy and engineering on that site. Again, a huge opportunity for young people, in particular around the north of the county. In the spirit of collaboration and partnership, Councillor Girling and I have been up to Harworth and Burcoats, where we met with the town council. We spoke to them about trying to bring some community buildings back into use and how we work together to deliver that. Again, part of the premise of what we're trying to achieve around the county, and we're going to focus on some particular areas of disadvantage over the coming months and highlight the opportunities with our community assets and with partners who deliver services in those areas to do more for some of the most disadvantaged communities around the county. So I look forward to bringing some of that to Cabinet and to full council in due course with further details. You'll have seen the announcements in the budget, which I was involved in the House, around levelling up partnerships and investment zones for our region. Again, exciting opportunities for us to bring in more investment, to work with partners, to create opportunities to invest in things that are meaningful, and the more of that, the merrier. Devolution we've discussed to death, so I don't intend to go over that anymore, other than to say I recently met with both Michael Gove and the Levelling Up Minister, Deanna Davidson, to explain further some of the things we'd like to see from them, including the conversation we've just had about further powers and further funding into the future. You'll have seen in the budget, again, additional funding for our highways, which I'm sure everybody in this room will welcome. I've been the first to say that £3.3 million will not fix all of our problems, but it is a 10% increase in our budget, roughly, and so will make a difference. And over the course of recent weeks, Councillor Clark and I have met with leadership at VIA to talk about recovery planning after the difficult weather that we've had and talk about how we invest in a plan to ensure that we mitigate against those kind of conditions over the course of next year. And finally, in the report, nearly finally in the report, we've been talking about with Councillor Cotty about opportunities to promote our county over the course of this summer, including the events that we hold regularly, Nottinghamshire Day, which is going to be part of the Robin Hood Festival this year, as well as our flag raising events. We should do more waving events as well. I think coronation, obviously, in the coming weeks, and we've had the announcement in the last few days that, of course, the Tour of Britain will be returning to Nottinghamshire this year, which is another fantastic event that showcases everything that is good about our county. So I don't intend to go into a great deal more detail, Mr. Chairman. As I say, we've got lots still to discuss this afternoon, but I hope that is enough to satisfy the curiosity of members.
Thank you, Councillor Bradley. May I call upon Councillor Bruce Lawton, who will second the motion?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I formally second the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lawton. Thank you. This is to note the report has been received by the Chamber. Thank you, members. We will now move on to agenda item 10A. Questions to Nottinghamshire and City of Nottinghamshire Fire Authority. As set out in the Constitution, a maximum of 15 minutes is allowed for questions to Nottinghamshire and City of Nottinghamshire Fire Authority, which any remaining questions will receive a written answer. There will be a maximum of one supplementary question, which must be from the member who has asked the original question. The supplementary question should be on the same matter and should not be in the form of a question nor a statement. There is one question, and the question is from Councillor Jason Rodney regarding Ashfield Fire Station. Michael Payne to reply.
Thank you, Chairman. On the 24th of February, the Fire Authority unanimously backed a recommendation which read, to instruct the Chief Fire Officer to swiftly work up and implement proposals at Ashfield Fire Station to address the identified gap in resourcing to risk faced by the community in Ashfield. Could the Chairman please give this Council an update on the progress to return Ashfield Fire Station to a 24-hour full-time service? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rodney. Councillor Michael Payne, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and with your indulgence, can I just take a couple of seconds to put on my record, and I hope the record of the entire County Council, thanks to the heroism and diligence of the fire service personnel who responded to the fire on the 18th of March on Forest Road in Mansfield at Savannah Rags. The debris and damage that was caused as part of that fire service, I think, was felt not only by those people who worked there, Mr. Chairman, but also by the wider community. And my heartfelt thanks to everybody who responded to that incident. Thank you for your question, Councillor Sodrosny. At the February 2023 Fire Authority meeting, an update report was presented by the Chief Fire Officer on the service's Futures 25 programme, which seeks to address the financial challenges that significant government cuts over the last decade continue to place on the fire service in future years. This also, as you're aware, Councillor Drosny, included the public consultation exercise on the potential need to reduce the number of fire appliances within Nottinghamshire Fire and Rescue Service as a result of ongoing government cuts. This exercise was data and evidence based, and there was a public consultation on it. I am pleased, Mr. Chairman, to report that the Labour-led Fire Authority have been able to mitigate the extent of cuts required for the coming financial year, with no cuts, I repeat, no cuts in the number of fire engines at London Road or Stockhill stations, nor any cuts at West Bridgeford, maintaining a 24-hour service at West Bridgeford Station. And congratulations to Councillor Penny Gowland, who spearheaded the campaign in that neck of the woods to protect that service. The Chief Fire Officer and wider management team are now working through possible options to resource to risk identified by independent experts in the Ashfield area. Work to identify options has already started, and the Chief Fire Officer envisages that they will be reported over the next few weeks, and certainly, Councillor Sodrosny, prior to this summer. I should say it is likely, given the ongoing severity of government cuts, that any option will require the redistribution of existing service resources unless Nottinghamshire Fire and Rescue Service sees an end to the ongoing cuts that it has received in recent years. Let me finish, Mr. Chairman, by saying this. We, and certainly I, as the Chairman of the Labour-led Fire Authority, are keen that the good people and good communities of Ashfield get their fair share of fire resources, even if the resources that we receive continue to dwindle year on year as a result of this right-wing pernicious Tory government. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Payne. Councillor Rodney, do you have a supplementary?
Thank you, Chairman. Firstly, can I thank Councillor Payne for his answer, and can I also associate myself and my group with the comments he made about the Savannah Rags incident? I think our teams there of all Blue Light Services and others, did incredible work. I want to personally thank Councillor Payne and the Chief Fire Officer for listening to our pleas. When the decision was made in 2018, we made a promise to the people of Ashfield that we'd fight for a reversal and for a full-time fire station. And we've continually shouted about this ever since. In his reply just now, Mr. Chairman, Councillor Payne talked about what I call the brutality of government funding cuts that have led to these decisions at our fire services, and that they might have to be a redistribution of those resources that we've got left. And I just wonder if Councillor Payne might take this opportunity to talk through what those funding cuts that the government have given to Nottinghamshire Fire and Rescue Service are since 2010 and the impact that they've had on us.
Councillor Payne, I think it was a question.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. There's nothing funny about Nottinghamshire Fire and Rescue Service receiving cuts from the government. I don't know why the people on the Conservative benches and the leadership of this county council find that funny. I don't think it's funny. It's a matter of life and death often in communities, fire services responding, and I'm sure you'd be the first, if there were cuts in your area, to be campaigning against them, just as Councillor Wheeler and Wheeler did in their area. So you might just want to reflect on laughing. You might not like what I'm saying, but it's a statement of fact, and it's a statement of fact of what your government have done over the last 13 years to our fire service in this area and the heroes who keep us safe day in, day out.
Just answer the question, please.
I am answering the question, Mr. Chairman. Somebody laughs when I'm responding to a serious question, they'll get a response, Mr. Chairman. I'm not going to sit here and have people laughing about the heroes who fight for us day in, day out in our fire service. And in response to the question, Councillor Zadrozny, I understand, by the way, Councillor Zadrozny, that they don't like me answering questions, so they're now going to try and remove the opportunity for questions to the chairman of the Fire Authority. He says the Working Party working on the Constitution. I've been briefed by somebody involved. We're the 7th worst affected fire and rescue service in the country as a result of that lot over there, and their friends in Westminster and Whitehall have continued to take an axe to the fire service in recent years. And I've trailed it out before in recent meetings. We've lost no end of engines in Arnold, in Colton, in other places that Conservative councillors represent. And this is often a matter of life or death. It is time for people to put party politics to one side and argue to the government that we should see an investment in our fire service. And when we had it, let me just finish on this point, Mr. Chairman, because they're still laughing. When we had an opportunity cross-party to make a case to the government minister for investment in the fire service, which was asked for by the Conservative Police and Crime Commissioner and by the member for Rushcliffe, Ruth Edwards, in good faith, because she said that Conservative MPs were interested in working with us, alongside Nadia Whittome, Alex Norris and Lillian Greenwood, how many of the Conservative MPs or the Conservative Police and Crime Commissioner bothered to turn up to that lobby of the minister? Not one. They were too busy messaging each other on WhatsApp. May I just finish on this point? Lillian Greenwood did turn up. Nadia Whittome did turn up. Alex Norris did turn up. The Chief Fire Officer did turn up. The Fire Brigades Union turned up. And this Labour Chairman of the Fire Authority turned up. Members of Parliament, including the Member of Parliament for Mansfield, was nowhere to be seen. So think twice when you start laughing about cuts to the fire service, because you might make arguments here in Mansfield and Nottinghamshire then. You go down to Westminster on the green benches and you've continued to vote for public service cuts year in, year out against the people that you represent.
Point of personal clarification, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, point of clarification. Can I just point out to Councillor Payne, and you'll see it's a matter of public record, we spoke about it at the time and shared photographs of myself and Ruth Edwards MP meeting the Fire Minister on that exact subject. As MPs who are in the party of government, we have access to ministers in a way that Labour MPs don't, which is why they have to hold meetings in Parliament to lobby. We don't. We have direct access to ministers. And Ruth Edwards and I have taken full advantage of that, with the result, as you have pointed out, that no cuts are having to be made.
Well done.
Thank you, members. Thank you. The more you speak now, the less time you get for the questions to the leader and cabinet members. Which we move on now. Agenda item 9B. Questions to the leader, cabinet members, and committee chair. As set out in the Constitution, we have 52 minutes left remaining for questions to the leader, the cabinet members, and committee chairs. After which, any remaining questions will receive a written response. There will be a maximum of one supplementary question, which must be from the member who asked the original question. The supplementary question should be on the same matter and should be in the form of a question and not a statement. There are 13 questions, and the first question is from Councillor Bethanetti concerning investment zones.
Thank you, Chairman. Would the Council leader join me in welcoming the Chancellor of the Exchequer's announcement in his spring budget that 12 new investment zones will be created across the UK, including one in the East Midlands? What does this mean for Nottinghamshire and the East Midlands in terms of economic development and central government investment?
Councillor Bradley to reply, please.
Thank you, Chairman. A good and pertinent question. If you'll indulge me for 10 seconds, I should add to the record, off the back of Councillor Payne's comments, just a word on the very hard work of Councillor Jonathan Wheeler and the Fire Authority of lobbying very hard and coming directly to MPs and to government to make the same point with successful results. On the question of investment zones, a really important opportunity for us, one that we're only able to access because we are on this path to devolution. Only areas with combined authorities or emerging combined authorities are able to host one of these investment zones. £80 million of flexible funding or incentives for things like either tax incentives to attract businesses to come and invest here, or also capital and revenue funding to get sites ready for those investments. And it builds on the funding we've already had, as I've mentioned, for things like retrofit, gigabit broadband, bringing forward brownfield land. It's very similar incentives to the Freeport. And you have to choose a specific sector. You'll be able to pick members who know our area well, and sure we'll be able to choose from these some of those that we have real capability in, but from sectors like digital and technology, green industries, life sciences, advanced manufacturing, creative industries. They're the ones that are nationally significant industries on government's list, and therefore, as you'll recognise, we have really good basis in several of those sectors to be able to build something really positive. It's worth saying, because I know members opposite had some concerns about investment zones when Liz Truss was Prime Minister, that these aren't the same proposition. It's a very research and science-led proposition, to the extent where we have to partner with a research institution, a university, to deliver it. And it is all about advancing those largely engineering and scientific sectors. There's also an opportunity for us to get 100% rates growth retention, which, again, is a hugely important benefit for us in terms of anything we're able to do in terms of bringing investment to the area, bringing jobs to the area. We can keep the benefits of that to reinvest. So that will be fantastic. The challenge that we will have is that other combined authority areas have clear governance. They have a system to put these decisions into, where collectively they can decide where this goes and what it looks like. Obviously, we are still some months away from having that system, so it wouldn't be right for me to say it should be this place or that place at this stage, because we're going to have to go and work that through with colleagues in Derby and Derbyshire and in Nottingham. But it does have the potential to attract significant inward investment to our area. And as I say, I can't say where it will be, but members will be able to think, and we talk on these benches a lot, of significant investments, anchor institutions, perhaps in the north of Nottinghamshire, that could benefit from these incentives if we look a little further down the road. So huge opportunities, and an example, as I've said, of where our journey on all of this, regardless of the conversation about structures and all the rest of it, our devolution journey is already starting to help us to make those changes for our residents.
Thank you very much, Councillor Brandley. Councillor Eddy, do you have a supplementary? No. Thank you. We'll move on to question 2 from Councillor Penny Gowland concerning school paces in West Bridgford, and Councillor Tracy Taylor to reply, please.
Thank you. The Council will be aware that children in West Bridgford have been offered secondary school places long distances from their home, and some as far away as Eastwood and Hucknall. This is clearly an appalling situation for the children and their families. What will the Council be doing to mitigate this problem, please?
Thank you. Councillor Taylor, please.
Thank you, Chairman. And thank you, Councillor Gowland, for the question. In the past few weeks, I've heard certain Labour councillors trying to imply that the situation that Councillor Gowland describes in her question is caused by a shortage of school places and a lack of school place planning in the Rushcliffe area. This is not true, and I believe Councillor Gowland and other Labour councillors know very well it is not true. Demand for school places in the Rushcliffe area is high, which is a complement to the quality of the schools in the area, but the situations to which Councillor Gowland refers mostly arise from the way some parents have chosen to engage with the school's admissions process, which is a national statutory procedure. To explain, and I'll quote directly from page 9 of the 23-24 Notts County Council Admission to Schools Guide for Parents booklet, it states, and I quote, "Before making your preferences, it is important that you consider carefully which schools you would like your child to go to. You should check the admission over subscription criteria for all of your preferred schools. We recommend that you use all 4 preferences, as listing only one preference could substantially reduce the chances of your child being allocated a preference." And I'll repeat this, Chairman, because it's absolutely key to answering Councillor Gowland's question and indeed to avoiding these unfortunate outcomes in the future. We recommend that you use all 4 preferences. If Councillor Gowland would like the answer, I'll proceed. As listing only one preference could substantially reduce the chances of your child being allocated a preference, you should check the admission over subscription criteria for all of your preferred schools. The guidance booklet also states, remember that living in the catchment area, attending a nursery or children's centre, attending a linked school, or having a brother or sister attending a school does not guarantee that your application will be successful. It's also crucially important to note our role in the admissions process described in the statutory code, and that is to administer it on behalf of secondary academies in Nottinghamshire, all of whom are their own admissions authorities. The academies define their own oversubscription criteria, each of which may be subtly different from the next. Chairman, the truth is that in most of the cases fitting the description in Councillor Gowland's question, parents unfortunately chose not to use all 4 of their preferences, and it was also evident in some cases that the choices were not for places at schools where their child met the eligibility criteria. If parents had listed 4 preferences, presumably for schools closer than Eastwood or Hucknall, and had heeded the eligibility criteria, they would have stood a far better chance of being successful in receiving an offer from one of those schools. But because they did not, those other parents who did exercise all 4 preferences were given consideration ahead of them. The Guide for Parents booklet could not be clearer about this process. In fact, the key words recommending parents to exercise 4 preferences are highlighted in bold. In a recent radio interview, I heard a spurious claim that this council is blaming parents who did not select 4 preferences. We are doing no such thing. We are simply explaining the statutory process that we must follow and emphasising why it is so important for parents to select 4 preferences and check eligibility criteria, but we cannot and would not force them to complete all 4. In effect, parents decide whether they wish to join up to 4 queues to get the place for a school, or whether they take the risk of joining only 3 or 2 or just 1 queue. The fewer queues you join, the more you are limiting your chances of achieving a desirable outcome. In fact, your child could even lose out on a place in a catchment school to a child whose parents have exercised all 4 preferences and included as alternate preferences schools which aren't in their catchment area. This in turn potentially pushes an applicant who did not exercise their preferences further and further away from the area and the schools that they would prefer. I'm not saying the system is right or wrong, but it is the way the school admission process works under the law. And as a council, we can only give our best advice to parents on how to achieve their preferred outcome. Councillor Gowland asks what we can do to mitigate the situation for children and parents who are not happy with the outcome of this latest process. There is a potential mitigation built into the system through the admission appeals process, where parents can appeal against a school's decision to offer a place and provide evidence of why they believe their child should be admitted. An independent panel of 3 or more people then hears the appeal and reaches a decision in line with the School Admissions Appeals Code. As a council, we do our utmost to offer parents a preferred school, but when families do not receive the offer they were hoping for whatever the reason, we fully understand the disappointment and frustration this can cause. We have in fact written to each parent from the West Bridgford area that received an alternate offer from a school some distance away, and we offered to provide additional support and guidance, including how to appeal for a school place at a more local school. I'm pleased to report that this year the vast majority of children in Nottinghamshire have been allocated a place at their preferred school. In Rushcliffe, 91% of families were offered their top preference school, and 97% received the offer of a school place at one of their preferences. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Councillor Garland, do you have a supplementary, please?
I honestly never been so cross in this council chamber. I really hope the media are here listening to this answer. I would like to, my supplementary question is coming. I'm aware that in 2018, Mr. Vernon Coker was told that this is the worst place, Rushcliffe is the worst place for schools in the county. I don't know how the council cannot have seen this coming, given they know the children who are in primary schools. I cannot see how the council cannot be aware that children whose families move for lots of different reasons between primary school and secondary school sometimes move between the two catchment areas. But my question for Councillor Taylor is, does she know how many comprehensive schools there are for non-Catholic children in West Bridgford? I'm aware of families who did put down 4 schools and they're ending up going 40 minutes to school anyhow. So even if they put down 4 schools, they're still going miles away.
Thank you. Councillor Taylor to reply, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I suppose what the question distilled down to was, do I know how many schools for non-Catholic children there are in the area? As a numerical response in this moment, I do not, but I can provide that information at a later date.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. We move on to question 3 from Councillor Dave Shaw about bus services, and Councillor Neil Clark to reply.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In February, Councillor Clark made the decision to ultimately lead to reductions in bus services in Hucknall, at the same time that this council stated its ambition that every Nottinghamshire community will be connected to a bus or a public service transport route. How does these service reductions, which will be implemented this Monday, square with this ambition, given the timescales of the bus service review that's now being undertaken? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Shaw. Councillor Neil Clark to reply, please.
Thank you, Chairman. It is no secret that bus services in Nottinghamshire and across the country are facing a severe challenge in recovering from the COVID pandemic. Passenger numbers are still around 80% of their previous levels in most areas outside Greater Nottingham. This presents a challenge in trying to protect as many bus routes as possible. Solutions that could work in one area, such as the Notts Bus on Demand service to villages, are not necessarily best suited to other areas. Councillor Shaw will be aware that local operators have advised us that a number of routes will be withdrawn or reduced from the 1st of April. In the context that bus operators are withdrawing services, Mr. Chairman, it is incorrect to say that my decision has led to reductions in bus services. It's the operators withdrawing services. The council has had to make difficult decisions about which routes to support, but we have recently approved funding to support 12 more routes. These are primarily routes where services will be completely withdrawn and would leave communities with no alternative access to public transport. The Hucknall Connect services are not being withdrawn, and most areas on the route will continue to receive a regular daytime service. The council currently supports over 80 routes at a cost of £4.1 million per year, Mr. Chairman. The additional 12 routes we intend to support will be funded from the 3-year £3.9 million bus service improvement plan funded from central government. A full review of all these bus services is underway, so we are open to examining different solutions and funding decisions to the ones currently in place. Indeed, it has been agreed that all county councillors will be included in the initial consultation exercise, after which any plans or developments resulting from the review will be considered later this year. Therefore, Mr. Chairman, I stand by our ambition that every community in Nottinghamshire will be connected to a bus or other public transport route. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Councillor Shaw, do you have a supplementary?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I must point out to the Chairman that we tried to put a notice of motion to this council to recommit £75,000 back into the pot, that Trent Barton said that that would be the necessary funding for the next 6 months so we can do a proper review. That was thrown out on a technicality because Neil Clark had made the decision in February and we couldn't reverse it. I noticed from Councillor Clark's responses that daytime services will not be affected. The daytime services will be finishing at 6 o'clock and we will have no service in the evening and we'll have no Sunday services to a much needed area. Does he think that the fact that the council got £30 million of the £98 million back bus back better bid last year was a factor in axing the subsidy for Hucknall Connect service? Who does he blame for the reductions in the service for the Connect line? The government, who reduced the funding pot, or himself? And I must also say that Councillor was fully aware of the meeting that took place that we had with Trent Barton, and Trent Barton specifically said the funding cutting was a specific factor in this. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Clark, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, it's interesting, the reference to this supposed motion, because there was a lot of hype in the social media beforehand about bringing this motion to the council. And what happened? It was rejected because it was out of order. But included in all that social media hype, there was a...
Councillor Clark, please reply.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll try and continue without interruption if possible.
Members, I will remind you we have less than an hour on this item. The more you talk, and in fact, when you're asking questions, ask your supplementaries and not do statements at the same time. We'll have time for more people to ask their questions. So it's up to you whether you want all the questions asked or whether you want to just chat and chatter. Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And as I said, it was rejected because it was out of order. So, and amongst all that social media hype, there was an insinuation that I had been, it was trying to make out that the Hucknall Connect services had been withdrawn, whereas I had ensured that Rushcliffe service in my division was continuing. And funny that, it was blatantly untrue, because both services, both in Hucknall and in Rushcliffe, have been adjusted and changed, Mr. Chairman, because this is a question of using the money that we have available in the best possible and most efficient way. And I have to say, this is my opportunity to pay tribute to the officers of this council, Mr. Chairman, because the officers who deal with bus services do a superb job in juggling the money that we have available and making sure that those services are available as much as possible, as well as negotiating with bus operators, because it's the bus operators, and it's been mentioned, bus operators have withdrawn some services, and our officers have been working jolly hard to negotiate, discuss and juggle things to make sure we can offer the best possible bus services that we can. So once again, Mr. Chairman, I stand by our ambition that every community in Nottinghamshire will have access to a bus service.
Thank you, members. Thank you, Councillor Clark. We'll move on to question 4 from Councillor Kate Hall about staff representations in scrutiny arrangements. Councillor Wheeler to reply. And please, members, the more you go on, the less time you've got for questions.
Thank you. So questions are coming at member of personnel. The views, experience and attitudes of our staff is vital to ensure that the council's decision making and scrutiny process are well informed. How in your role as cabinet member have you been able to represent a cabinet during the scrutiny process where decisions which impact upon personnel are being considered?
Thank you, Councillor Fogel. Councillor Gordon Wheeler to reply, please.
Thanks, Chairman. Thank you, Councillor Fogel, for your question. I agree, wholeheartedly agree, it's important that employees are properly engaged and consulted by those responsible for important matters on decisions which may have significant impact on their employment in the council in line with our agreed policies and procedures. A staffing consultation mechanisms have been agreed with trade unions and are set on employment relations and also in the Constitution in employment procedure rules which form part of a collective bargaining arrangement. Most employees' related decisions are delegated to the Chief Executive, a head of paid services, and other officers delegated by Chief Executive with whom responsibility for full and proper staff consultation lies. Chairman, in some instances, proposals require formal collective consultation and we are bound by how we consult in these circumstances by the Trade Union and Labour Relation Consolidation Act of 1992. Chairman, I meet regularly with trade unions. I met them on 2nd of February. My next meeting with the trade unions on 26th of April. Marjorie and Hannah, our HR officer, meet regularly with trade union sides and keep them up to date and informed. It's a great consultation mechanism, which I think probably works better here than anywhere else. My personal view. Where there are decisions made by the Cabinet that impact upon employees, the relevant Cabinet member will work with officers to confirm that they have undertaken the necessary staffing arrangements and consultation and what the outcome and possible impacts are, Mr. Chairman. I'm sure you know, Kate, in the Cabinet model of governance, selected committee and overview and scrutiny committees are not decision-making bodies. As such, it's difficult to imagine where the requirements to directly consult employees will be met in a scrutiny context. As a cabinet member for personnel, I am not accountable for staff engagement on individual decisions across the council, as I've already described. It is also not within my delegation as cabinet member for personnel to represent the views of employees during the scrutiny process you have described in your question. Any consultation employees will take place by officers in relation to the actual decision, not at scrutiny stage. Employees have the right to represent their own views in this process or be represented, as I've said earlier on, by a recognised trade union. Good, thank you. In considering the decision or proposed change to services with a potential impact on employees, scrutiny members may ask questions about staff consultation and the outcomes. I'm aware that recent scrutiny undertaken by the Overview Committee, ably chaired by Boyd Elliott, involved a number of member visits and formal dialogue with staff about their views in relation to ways of working and use of buildings as part of a wide-ranging review of use of council buildings. In my role, I do have oversight of wide informal employee and engagement activities across the council, as it's important to know the views of our staff on a broad range of employment matters and to provide opportunities for employees to raise issues, hence the consultation which I referred to earlier on, Mr. Chairman. This involves ongoing dialogue between staff and managers, staff newsletters, internet pages, blogs, surveys, focus groups, workshops, and to name but a few. This approach is reflected in a Nottinghamshire Way programme. We have worked with staff to shape our values and the culture of the organisation. 8. I'd be very happy to meet with you to talk through the council approach to these matters if you would find it helpful. As part of the discussion, I can also explain to you how the leader posts are reviewed, addressed, and can deliver the service in another way, I hope a far more efficient way too. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Wheeler. Councillor Paul, do you have a supplementary, please?
Yes, thank you, please, yes. Okay, thank you. And I do appreciate that a lot does go on here. I do understand that. But the perception of staff that I'm getting back is actually that they feel, since the cabinet system, their voice is less likely to be heard. It's got less opportunity for it to be heard. So I've got a suggestion for you. I don't know whether you've been able to attend any of the scrutiny committee meetings, and I understand that's not where decisions are made, but it is where points can be raised on behalf of staff, is it not? Which is what I've tried to do on occasion. And certainly, if you look at things like the hybrid working strategy and some of the issues about the building closures, staff clearly felt they weren't heard. And actually, the hybrid working strategy, that review is now well overdue. So what I'm questioning are two things really. One is how you can actually represent staff views, and also what happens in terms of kind of formal consultation. But I'm not just talking about formal consultation here. So. As I say, I'm not sure if you've been able to attend any of the scrutiny meetings, and I realise it must be difficult for you, but if you want to really kind of properly kind of represent our brilliant staff, I understand there used to be an overview, a personnel scrutiny subcommittee, and the staff very much mourned the passing of that. They felt that was a really good opportunity for them to kind of help themselves to make their points heard. I wonder if that could be reconstituted, and if perhaps you could be part of that, if that might be another way of actually hearing stuff. Because it's not just about employment matters either, is it? It's a whole kind of range of different issues. And for me, frontline staff in particular, they can tell us an awful lot about what's going on out there and really inform our decision making in a way that can be very helpful.
No, absolutely. Thank you, Councillor Paul. Councillor Wheeler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Kate. I'm very happy if the chair of the scrutiny committee wishes to invite me, I will come along. I have no problems with that. I will make the time to come along. It's down to the chairman of the scrutiny committee. Kate, I reiterate my offer. If there are issues you want to discuss, yeah, let's do it. We're all here to represent our staff and give our staff the best possible service we can. I mentioned already, but I'm saying it again, I consult widely with the staff regularly, and I'm sure our officer will underscore what I've just said in terms of consultation. But we can all do better. Of course we will. Of course we can. But I'm looking to widen the scope of discussion. There's some very important decisions coming up to be made. So I again offer you the opportunity, Kate, to come and talk whenever you want. My diary is there for our officers to see and to make a slot available for you. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Wheeler. Question 5 from Councillor Mike and Trona regarding levelling up partnerships. Councillor Ben Bradley to reply.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And may I also add my thanks and congratulations for the way that you and your good lady have represented our council over the last year. I will now try and be brief to ensure that Councillor Henshaw can get his question in at the end. You're very welcome. Would the council leader join me in welcoming the Chancellor's announcement in his spring budget that the districts of Bassetlaw and Mansfield are two of the areas being invited to form levelling up partnerships to provide bespoke place-based regeneration over the 2023-24 and 24-25 periods? Could the leader please explain what financial and practical benefits this announcement will bring to these areas as part of our county?
Thank you, Councillor Trona. Councillor Bradley, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mike, for your question. Another example of an opportunity for our county from the Levelling Up programme, the gimmick, as it's been described, the vanity project, that is funding North Nottinghamshire to the tune of pushing 300 million quid now over the course of the last year or 18 months or so. So huge opportunities for us. And I'm pleased that North Nottinghamshire represents 10% of the country's allocation of this round of levelling up partnerships, with both Mansfield and Bassetlaw worthy of support. And like levelling up bids, district councils didn't bid for these, so I should put my thanks on record to Brendan Clark-Smith for his work in lobbying the government, and Councillor Payne already knows that Mansfield is always front of the queue anyway, so that should be a given. So the opportunity to have structured conversations with government on these is really important. Unlike levelling up fund bids, we haven't submitted a specific project. This is government saying, let's have a conversation between partners locally and the department about the data, about the need locally, and about what therefore we can build and deliver. Brendan Clark-Smith and I have written to the Minister just in the last week to say that we really want to see a strategic approach to this so that we can seek to tackle some of those long-standing issues and make sure we don't just end up building a building with a short-term impact. We want to do something really meaningful. So I hope that that long-term focus on Bassetlaw and Mansfield, strong relationship with government that can come for this, means that we can replicate some of the examples. If members want to have a quick Google of places like Grimsby or Blackpool who've achieved some really big outcomes from these partnerships in the past, I hope that we can replicate some of those for our communities.
Thank you, Councillor Bradley. Councillor Trone, do you have a supplementary?
Leader, I'd particularly be interested to understand better in the ability of the districts to use the funds across all their towns and villages, as certainly in Bassetlaw, who have used grants and a levelling up bid, which together in recent years total circa £30 million to support projects in Worksop alone. Other areas in Bassetlaw have received little consideration. It is easy to understand how residents of Retford, where I represent the community, Tuxford, Harworth and Burcoats, Misterton and our other rural communities feel that they have been ignored by Bassetlaw District Council and need for them to have no more excuses to stop favouring one area and to work together with all stakeholders to do what's in the best interest of the whole district. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bradley, please.
Thank you, Mike. And important, I think, to get on record, I think Brendan has addressed this as well in the last few weeks, that there is no government limitation that's prevented Bassetlaw District Council from bidding for projects for Retford, and that in this levelling up partnership conversation, it's for us collectively to decide where this money goes. There's absolutely nothing preventing this money from being spent in Retford. So that's important for you and Bassetlaw members to know, and we should certainly hold local councils there to account over the use of funding that's been allocated to them. As I pointed out, I think it's really important that we look at the data, we look at the challenges and things like, where money has and hasn't been spent in recent times to make sure that we fill gaps with this and that we make sure that we have the maximum impact. You'll know that Councillor Girling and I were in Burcoats just the other day looking at an opportunity to bring forward a project in partnership with Bassetlaw and other councils and other stakeholders. That's what we need to do here and make sure we do something meaningful, but it absolutely should be the case that Retford should be considered as part of this programme as well.
A point of clarification, please, Chair.
Councillor Carr.
As we're now in the election period, Monitoring Officer, is it appropriate for comments to be made about the policies of a district council during a district council election period?
I think I pass on that one. I think you've been electioneering all morning, to be perfectly honest.
Ship has sailed.
Hey? That ship has sailed, yes.
Point of clarification. Point of clarification, Mr. Chairman. Also, a councillor who was a candidate in the Mayor of Mansfield election used this meeting to garner support in his candidature. There were very strict rules on this.
But I think you helped him on the way anyway. We'll move on to question 6, please, from Councillor Francis Pure-Haldren, please, concerning strategic review of recycling centre network. Councillor Neil Clark to reply.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On the 5th of January 2022, last year, Nottinghamshire County Council approved carrying out a strategic review of the recycling centre network across Nottinghamshire to, and I quote, ensure it continues to meet the increasing needs of the county's growing population. End of quote. This strategic review was expected to take 3 months, then delayed with the recommendations expected by the end of January 2023. Mr. Chairman, what has changed?
Councillor Neil Clark.
Well, when we got rid of you.
Members, please, come on, let's have some decent respect for each other. Councillor Clark, please. Thank you, Nick. Thank you, Neil.
Thank you, Chairman. If Councillor Purgey-Horan had actually read the recent Nottingham Post online article about recycling centres, he would already know the answer to his question. Nottinghamshire County Council is in the process of finalising a strategic review of our recycling centre network, and Councillor Purgey-Horan is correct that this process is taking longer than originally anticipated, but for very good reasons. In actual fact, who's asking the question, Mr. Chairman? I thought it was Councillor Purgey-Horan.
16 minutes left. Okay. Councillor Clark, I mean, the more you talk, members, the less time you've got for questions. So the ball's in your court. Councillor Clark, continue, please.
Reference was made in the question to expected by the end of January 2023. Well, that was an invention by Councillor Purgey-Horan's independent colleagues on the scrutiny committee, asking and requesting for something by the end of January. It wasn't the administration putting that forward. We are keen to ensure that the proposals arising from the review deliver a service suitable to meet the waste recycling needs of residents long into the future. The review is taking account of learning from the COVID pandemic, predicted housing growth, and upcoming changes to curbside collections required to meet the statutory obligations of the Environment Act and the Resources and Waste Strategy for England. Any proposals resulting from the review need to align with national waste and recycling policy, and this means that it's not possible to finalise our recycling centre review or complete a refresh of our recycling centre strategy within our original timescales, given the delays to the implementation of the Environment Act and Resources and Waste Strategy. We will continue with the review and announce our proposals as soon as possible. This review is for the whole of Nottinghamshire. The outcomes of the review will cover all of Nottinghamshire, not just Rushcliffe, but it is certainly important to ensure we put the right plan in place for the Rushcliffe area. If that means taking longer to fully incorporate the factors I've described, it's better we do that properly rather than implement the wrong solution quickly. I use the phrase, Mr. Chairman, better to be right than rushed. Thank you. Cliff.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Councillor Pure-Holden, do you have a supplementary?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I thank Councillor Clark for his answer. And indeed, your indulgence has been very, very generous to your colleagues this afternoon. And if I may, just correct Councillor Clark that the information in my first question was taken from Nottinghamshire County Council minutes, which obviously I didn't write. Mr. Chairman, some people might suggest that this has been delayed until after the local elections. And the reality is that we have been promised a recycling centre in the Rushcliffe area for over 6 years. And Rushcliffe's recycling rate has taken a massive hit. They were once in the Premiership, if we liken it to football, in the top 10 councils, and they're now languishing to just simply try and remain within the top 100. Mr. Chairman, can he tell me when he first became aware that the Copgrave site was deemed to be unsuitable? Who told him? And whether this was a factor in the strategic review of recycling centres being delayed twice? Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Clark.
I can't remember at all, Mr. Chairman. I don't keep the dates of every conversation that I've had with every officer, and I don't believe that anybody else does either. It's not so long ago that Councillor Purgey-Horan was supporting our policy as a Conservative councillor, and now he's using this issue for election purposes. Quite spuriously, it has been used when it's a county council issue, whereas the elections that he is talking about in all his leaflets, when he refers to recycling review, should be about district council elections and issues. So I do find it very odd that he chooses this very moment to discuss county council issues, which has got nothing to do with his leaflets. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. We move on to question 7. We have 10 minutes left from Councillor Michelle Welsh concerning frontline work interactions with families experiencing food poverty, and Councillor Tracy Taylor to reply.
Thank you, Chairman. The Council's early help strategy states that many more families are experiencing food insecurity and the number of children living in poverty is rising. As this council has ended its partnership with Family Action to deliver 11 food clubs across Nottinghamshire via the use of our children's centre services, is a Cabinet member concerned that this decision may mean fewer opportunities for our frontline workers to interact with those children and families experiencing food poverty?
Thank you. Councillor Tracy Taylor to reply, please.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Councillor Welsh. The initial funding received by Family Action was administered through our Public Health and Communities functions, falling within the remit of the Cabinet Members for Adult Social Care and Public Health and the Cabinet Member for Communities, rather than me. But given that you referenced the issue of children's centre services, I am happy to take the question. Since the start of the COVID-19 pandemic, Notts County Council has awarded significant amounts of money to support food redistribution schemes. In 2020, there were no known schemes in Nottinghamshire, but funding received through temporary COVID grants from central government enabled 22 Family Action Food on Our Doorstep clubs to be established, 11 of which were hosted in children's centre buildings, given that the normal use of the centres had been interrupted by the pandemic. It's untrue to imply that Notts County Council ended its partnership with Family Action, to quote Councillor Welsh's words, and I'd have to add it does seem to be a day for having to correct the Labour councillor questions in terms of the way they're framed before we actually get to the real facts. The COVID funding used to sustain these Food on Our Doorstep clubs was by definition a temporary funding stream that simply came to an end in August 2022. In fact, as an interim measure, this administration made available £50,000 for the Food on Our Doorstep club schemes in children's centre service buildings to continue operating until March 2023. Between August 22 and December 22, we conducted a review of the food redistribution schemes, exploring the availability of provision across the county, particularly given that new schemes had been developed by community and voluntary organisations in response to local need. That report was discussed on the 15th of December. With life returning to normal after the pandemic, the right priority for our children's centres has been to return to delivering core services for families with children under 5 and expectant parents. This may or may not mean that there are fewer opportunities for our frontline workers in these centres to interact specifically with children and families experiencing food poverty, but the Council as a whole remains very attentive to this issue. In December, the County Council's Cabinet agreed that food redistribution schemes should be supported, with funding made available to the voluntary and community sector via our local communities fund, which is administered through the communities portfolio. This has enabled £210,000 to be made available over the next 3 years, funds totalling £90,000 for 23-4, £65,000 for 24-5, and £55,000 for 25-6. We continue to work closely with our borough and district council colleagues to make sure voluntary and community sector organisations are aware of this funding. We seek to ensure food redistribution schemes are based in the best location for the people to need them. To date, Family Action have not made any bids for Local Communities Fund food redistribution grant monies. And I note that my colleague, Communities in Place, signed a decision yesterday in respect of allocation of money under the latest scheme. The voluntary and community sector plays a crucial role in providing a lifeline to some of our most vulnerable and hard to reach residents. The sector is well placed to deliver food redistribution schemes in their local area, and we are pleased to support them with the local communities funding. This means our children's centres have fulfilled a commendable alternative role during the unusual conditions of the pandemic and are now able to refocus fully on their primary purpose. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Councillor Walsh, you have a supplementary, please.
Yes, Chairman. Just a bit of advice to start off with as someone who lived and breathed questions. If you don't think a question is appropriate, then you need to take it to your monitoring officer, because that's who rules whether questions go ahead or not. So to say that it's not true, then you need to have a word with your monitoring officer if she thinks this is not factual. Everyone knows that's the case with regards to questions. You said in your reply that you gave an additional 50k, then chose to stop it. Is that not ending a service? Is my first question. The second one, does the member agree with me? Because I didn't hear about the fewer opportunities. Does the member agree with me that one of the most important roles of a children's frontline worker is to be present, to spot things others might miss? And if so, why is it that this decision did not have the safeguarding of children as its primary concern?
Thank you. Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Chairman. I think this was less about whether the monitoring officer would actually allow a question and whether the council.
You can't say that I'm finding a question when a monitoring officer. Point of order, you can't say that I'm not putting facts into a question when it has been allowed by our monitoring officer. You need to take that back. My question has been allowed by this monitoring officer.
Answer the question, please, Councillor Taylor, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd be delighted to if it wasn't for the nonsense across the room. Would you like an answer, Councillor Welch? Primary role of children's centre service staff is to support the needs of children and families. At the present time, with a children's centre model, that is children and families under 5, we know that we are looking to roll out the development of family hubs. They have a slightly different role and remit. They will serve families with children up to the age of 19.
Right. Thank you, Councillor Taylor. We have time just for one question. Question 8 is from Councillor Matt Barney about Skylink's bus service. Councillor Neil Clark to reply.
Thank you, Chairman. Earlier today, I was pleased to present petitions from people living on the Nottinghamshire-Leicestershire border expressing their concern about Trent Barton's proposed decision to discontinue the Skylink bus route between East Midlands Airport and Loughborough, which serves several villages in the southwest of my division. Nottinghamshire County Council previously stepped up to save this part of the Skylink route and fund it until April 23, but unfortunately patronage has not been sufficient to make it viable, even with the Council's financial support. Does the Cabinet member nevertheless appreciate how important this bus service has been to some residents in my division who rely on it to access jobs at East Midlands Airport? And can this council do anything to help them continue commuting to and from the airport and local towns, given the importance of these jobs to the local economy? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Barney. Councillor Neil Clark to reply, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I absolutely do appreciate how important the Skylink bus service between East Midlands Airport and Loughborough is to some of Councillor Barney's residents and others who rely on it to access jobs at East Midlands Airport. As with other bus services to those in village communities, the fact that a service might not command enough passengers to make it commercially viable does not mean it is any less vital to the small number of people who rely on it, whether that's to get to jobs at an airport, into major towns, to access shops and other amenities, or anywhere else. Therein lies our dilemma. We appreciate the value of bus transport, not least for people in this predicament, but we cannot write blank cheques from public money to subsidise a multitude of bus routes that fall well short of commercial viability. To do so would put too much pressure on the Nottinghamshire taxpayer. That's why we seek to target the money we currently spend on supporting bus services in a very careful, evidence-based way, focusing on those services whose withdrawal would leave passengers with no alternative at all, and those that could conceivably regain commercial viability given the right interim support. As I've said in previous council meetings, we're now looking at new ways of serving people who really need a bus service, but where passenger numbers are insufficient to meet commercial viability thresholds throughout a fixed bus route. The key concept behind our new NOTS Bus on Demand service is that we send our buses to stops where we know passengers are waiting for them, rather than the bus travelling a fixed route past stops where there's nobody to collect and perhaps even travelling empty. It's still a bus service, but not a door-to-door taxi service, but it's far more efficient, environmentally friendly and responsive to public need. The council was successful in a bid to the government's Rural Mobility Fund to introduce 4 demand-responsive transport pilots, NOTS Bus on Demand, in Nottinghamshire. The first 3 were successfully implemented last year, replacing traditional fixed route services, and the 4th pilot is going to be introduced in Rushcliffe to improve travel opportunities for residents, including the travel to work for work purposes I just mentioned. This area was the next best example to be considered as a pilot, following the excellent feedback from those 3 pilot services further north in the county. This new service, which will replace the 865 service, will connect people from your division, Councillor Barney, to a number of key destinations, including East Midlands Airport, East Midlands Gateway, East Midlands Parkway, and the NET Park and Ride site in Clifton. It will enable passengers to connect to other bus services, including the remaining Skylink network, Nottingham City Transport Services 1 and 53, and the tram. So I think you can see from that, Mr. Chairman, it will provide a very important link to other services. Given Trent Barton's proposed commercial decision to withdraw the Skylink leg that goes via Sutton Boddington, I have asked officers to consider the provision of some peak services to cater for workers and students for a trial period. The use it or lose it principle still applies. We cannot justify investing public money in any type of bus service that people say they want, but then don't use. However, I believe this new NOTS Bus on Demand approach has the potential to achieve best value and great outcomes for passengers and taxpayers alike. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Unfortunately, Councillor Barney, we've run out of time now, so for your supplementary, we have to be a written answer along with all the other questions which haven't been asked today. Thank you for your participation on that. Just before we go to notices and motions, members, I'll probably just read out the winners of the raffle prize. It might hurry up through the motions to get out there and put your prize up. You never knows. Anyway, thank you for all your support, councillors. We raised another £167 for my good cause, and the winning prizes are Jonathan Wheeler's won a bottle of port, Boyd Elliott has won a bottle of gin, Andy Meakin has won a bottle of red wine, Sam Smith has won a bottle of Bucks Fizz, John Cotty has won the second bottle of red wine, Mike and Tona has won the box of chocolates, Steve Garner, which I believe, brought tickets for him so he can drop off for a cup of tea and have a box of biscuits with him. And Andy Meakin has won the second prize of an Easter egg. So. Thank you, members. You'll be glad to know that whether John's going to do a raffle, but you probably won't get one. We move on to agenda item 10, notice of motion, and I call upon Councillor Francis Purehoran to move a motion, please.
perdu, to be lost. Perdu, Horn. Mr. Chairman, Councillor Darby and I have been waiting to move this motion since the 9th of February. We believe that it is a small tweak that we can make that will benefit our poorest residents. In moving this motion, it's important to note that free school meal claimants are the biggest single indicator of child poverty in Nottinghamshire and across the country. As the table contained within the motion says, there are now 25,265 children on free school meals across Nottinghamshire. At this point, I suppose I should declare an interest as a previous free school meal claimant myself. I'm very grateful to Nottinghamshire County Council for allowing me to benefit from that. To put that into perspective, that's virtually the capacity of Old Trafford Cricket Ground. These are the highest figures since records began. In some areas like Ashfield and Mansfield, 1 in 3 children, 1 in 3, are claiming free school meals. In other communities, most children are, but some, probably the children who need them the most aren't, all because of the opt-in system. As I said, I was a claimant myself, or my mother was. I know the stigma attached. I know the teasing and the bullying that you can have. Kids were often made to stand in a different queue at school and made to feel different. Many parents, for whatever reason, be it their own personal issues, choose not to opt in. The problem doesn't just affect a few children, it is more prevalent. The Children's Society, in its Fair and Square Free School Meals for All Children in Poverty report, reveals that 500,000 of the 2.2 million children living in poverty do not take up their free school meals, due partly to fear of being teased or bullied. And I rather suspect, Mr. Chairman, that everyone in this room would probably join with each other in seeing how we can perhaps have some influence in changing that. At the beginning of this motion are the words, Nottinghamshire County Council believes that it should do everything possible to ensure that no child goes hungry. It is this sentence that is the motivation for the Independent Alliance bringing this motion before you today. The long-term ambition of the Independent Alliance is universal free school meals. We have to accept, however, that such is the current financial climate. We have to find a way to ensure that every child who currently qualifies for free school meals gets them at a minimum. That's why we are proposing an opt-out policy, as indicated in this motion. This is already being done in Sheffield City Council with their auto award scheme. I'd like to thank Sheffield City Council for sending our research team the results of them already doing what we are proposing today. Sheffield, like Nottinghamshire, contains many areas of deprivation. Introducing their auto award or opt-out policy has meant many successful outcomes. It has meant more children having access to healthy free school meals, and to date an additional 3,285 primary and secondary age children have been awarded free school meals, and 2,118 early years children have been identified as eligible for free school meals when they reach school age. This has ensured that the most disadvantaged children have access to at least one square meal a day whilst at school. This is critical to their overall development, both physical, mentally, and educationally, as we all know. A parent saves around £400 per child per year through claiming their free school meals. The work to introduce Auto Award has also resulted in significant additional pupil premium funding for schools. Since 2016, an additional £10 million has been generated for schools to provide targeted support to improve the life chances of disadvantaged children and young people. And I've just been discussing, Mr. Chairman, with my colleague Councillor Carr, that in actual fact the pupil premium policy was introduced by the Liberal Democrats whilst in government with David Cameron's Conservatives. For the Independence Alliance, adopting the Auto Award is a no-brainer. Not only will it help those most in need, it will also assist schools with much needed additional funding. There is the issue with data, you might ask. According to the Information Commissioner's Office, and I quote, "There must be a specific purpose for councils sharing personal data. Before you share information with another organisation, you should be clear on what the sharing is meant to achieve. You will need to record your purposes and specify them in your council's privacy information to individuals." End of quote. This means that sharing the data is perfectly possible, and despite Nottinghamshire being in a sort of a multi-tiered local authority arrangement, Nottinghamshire County Council will already directly use DWP data to assess eligibility for free school meals and the Household Support Fund. There are questions that need still answering before we are calling, and therefore we are calling for this to be investigated further. I would request that this is delegated to the Children and Families Select Committee that I am now Vice Chair of. I will be asking for this to be considered at our next meeting on the 19th of June before recommendations go to the Cabinet, perhaps for the 22nd of June for implementation in the 23-24 academic year. We will happily pass on our research on to the education team appropriately. The Independent Alliance also believe that this will reduce the burden on schools. Schools use valuable time and resources to encourage parents to apply for income-based free school meals to secure their rightful entitlement and help maximise pupil premium funding. The Auto Award process in Sheffield removes the need for this and secures more stable funding for schools based on the true entitlement of free school meals. I would therefore ask members to support this non-political, party political motion that will mean more children will not go hungry. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Holden. Councillor Debbie Darby, 2 seconds.
Thank you, Chairman. Healthy eating is essential for our children's good health, growth and development. Healthy eating in childhood means that they will have less chance of developing chronic diseases like heart disease, type 2 diabetes, obesity and some cancers. This will also mean that they will feel better and enjoy life more. Many of our children are going hungry. This has got far worse since the cost of living crisis has got a lot worse. This, as you will see from the figures attached to this motion, more than 1 in 5 children claim free school meals. In Newark and Sherwood, that figure is higher. It is at 23.7%. That does not tell the whole story, however. There are areas of deprivation within boroughs and districts, in the Bridge Ward and in the heart of Newark. That figure is likely to be 1 in 3. We genuinely believe, however, that this is the tip of the iceberg. We believe that there are many children who are not getting their entitlement to free school meals. How could anybody with any conscience not do everything possible to ensure every child who qualifies get at least 1 square meal a day? As Councillor Francis Purley-Horan has said, our team have been in touch with the education team in Sheffield to discuss how they did with this. They speak proudly, ensuring thousands of extra children get fed and the schools maximise funding. I would plead with members to back the plans outlined in this motion. If it feeds 1 more child, or raises 1 more pound, or 1 more school, it will be worth it. The reality, Mr. Chairman, it will do far more than that. It is the exact reason why we are here. I am proud to second this motion and would encourage members to do the same. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Darby. I now open it up to members who have indicated to talk. Councillor Ben Bradley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm about to do the same, Kate. Can I introduce our amendment, Mr. Chairman? I understand that we hope you've got some copies we can share around. Is that correct? You just accept ours. Just accept ours and move on. It's all very nice. It's all very nice. Just give that a second to be distributed.
Yeah, and members, just to be clear, we've had an amendment submitted that's been validated. That's what's about to be moved. We can only discuss one amendment at a time, so we'll work through that process. Let's do one at a time.
You want 10 minutes?
Okay, now we'll have it moved to second first, please. Call upon Councillor Bradley to move the amendment.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd move the amendment that has been distributed, and just by way of explanation, I hope it's uncontroversial. I think it probably expands the scope of what's being asked and helps us to do even more. Obviously, the idea of supporting eligible children to take up their entitlement to free school meals is one we entirely support and one that makes sense because, of course, free school meals are linked to pupil premium funding and therefore also a source of funding for schools. None of that comes out of our council budgets either, so it's a win-win really. We're very keen to do more, so keen in fact that Councillor Taylor and I discussed this with officers before Christmas and raised exactly this point several months ago, so we've begun already to look at the art of the possible in this area. The amendment seeks to make some very minor corrections. The first, a factual one. The table of data doesn't show the highest figures. It shows the figures. It doesn't give an indication of direction of travel or compare with previous figures. We know the number of children have gone up, not least because the government deliberately expanded the eligibility to ensure that more children qualified during COVID, as well as obviously rising prices and other factors. But that's not what the table shows. The table shows a number. So that's just simply a factual change. We also want to acknowledge that historic work and ongoing work of officers and of the council to promote enrolment, which is something that's been ongoing for many years. And finally, we've sought to expand the resolutions to a wider range of options. I'm really interested in this example of Sheffield City Council, though I don't think it's right from what I can see to refer to it as auto enrolment. I think it's more about data sharing and highlighting eligibility. It's more complex here, of course, because as been pointed out, we have two-tier local government, and a lot of that data is actually held by districts and boroughs regarding housing and benefits rather than by us. I know Councillor Purdy-Horan suggested that the Housing Support Fund is an example of us using it. I'd point out that the Housing Support Fund is delivered in partnership with districts and boroughs. So I cannot say for certain that it can or cannot be done, but it's something we need to examine. And what I don't want to do is restrict us to something that we later find out doesn't work. In that vein, I don't believe that an opt-out policy, as you described, would be legal under data protection laws either. And my understanding of things, which I'm yet to verify and we can dig into as we go through this process, is that this is that bit, the auto-enrolment bit, has yet to be fully implemented anywhere for that reason. So we've sought to tweak the language slightly just to recognise those legal factors and actually expand the scope to allow us to consider all sorts of other options. But of course, we'll happily investigate the proposals that are suggested and confirm what I've said about legality either way. Happy to consider any and all options to promote the take-up of this service. I hope councillors agree, Mr Chairman, that this motion fully maintains the spirit and the proposals from the original. It's just some tweaks to language, adds a bit about what we already do, and hopefully gives us more scope to look into this in a more holistic way. It sounds very achievable. I want us to be able to agree something today that's meaningful and can be implemented. So just by way of summary, we totally agree. Who wouldn't agree if there are children in need of support and who are eligible for support and are not getting it? And of course, we should be trying to help them access it. We just want to ensure the motion recognises the work that already goes on and that there's sufficient scope in the resolutions to make sure we can do something meaningful off the back of it. I'll let Councillor Taylor speak a little bit more to some of that about what happens now and the practicalities of implementing some of it, but I hope the amendment can be agreed swiftly and then we can take something forward with a degree of consensus. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Bradley. Called upon Councillor Tracy Taylor to second this amendment, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm pleased to second the amendment. The extent of free school meals take-up is something I've raised with officers at intervals since I've been in Children and Family Service role, and I'm grateful that the leader has also championed this. The awareness and the uptake has been a subject of regular debate at committee and full council, particularly when we've been receiving data on the numbers of claimants, and we know there are families who don't claim free school meals despite being eligible for reasons ranging from lack of awareness to fear of stigma, and Councillor Purdy-Horan has already referenced some of the elements of stigma that mean that people feel held back. There is also something around registration lag. So if parents don't register because their children are in receipt of the universal offering when they're under 7, so there's some work to do in that space as well. Increasing take-up of eligibility of free school meals is something that we would actively want to encourage. As children eligible, again, as Councillor Purdy-Horan has said, they have access not only to a free school meal, but they also attract the pupil premium funding. And this includes children who've been registered as eligible for a free school meal on the census at any point within the last 6 years. So what's known as ever 6. So it's not just in the moment. This sees them through a period of their school life. So the value of the support to a child at school is significantly increased, which helps outcomes for the most disadvantaged families. Again, as has already been said, there is no formal mechanism currently that allows schools to auto-enrol. Did some research given that you wanted to have this debate at the previous council meeting, and I've just looked again at the Sheffield situation given your latest comments. I can see the way that Sheffield are approaching this. It isn't literally an auto-enrolment. It does involve some dialogue with parents to allow data sharing. So I've got the specimen letter on the screen. And it's also interesting to note that as a local authority area, it isn't actually universal either, because they reference certain schools who are actually their own authority in respect of the delivery of free school meals. So there's a few sort of holes in the knitting as far as that goes. So it certainly isn't smooth and complete, which is the place that I think we would all agree we would want to get to. So the fact that that mechanism doesn't exist, that hurdle was actually formally recognised in the recommendations of the National Food Strategy report way back in July 21. and it was actually taken up by the LGA in March last year as a campaign to actually try and move this forward. So far, we're still awaiting the legislative changes needed to make it an easy, straightforward, automatic process. So long as no formal mechanism exists easily for us in a two-tier authority region, we can only work to influence the take-up. The Children and Family Service team continues to promote the need for families to register, and they do that with schools and with other partners. The council promotes the benefits related free school meals through social media at key points in the school year, and I suppose I offer this just to give reassurance about the work that is currently underway. And it carries out weekly checks for any change to the entitlement for those families who have made a benefits related free claim but are not yet in receipt of one of the qualifying benefits. So there are some strands of messaging and work that's going on as we speak. So, all in all, who would not support the ambitions of the motion? I think the one other comment I would make at this point is just in terms of scrutiny. It's not for me to say. I'll take correction from officers or my colleagues with that responsibility as to how you would potentially look to have that done. But in essence, I'm really pleased to be seconding an amended motion to actually have better take up through more public focus in having this debate today. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Councillor Pugh-Hornan, do you accept the amendment?
Yep.
You may have an adjournment, yes.
10 minutes.
10 minutes or 10 minutes long enough?
25 past.
Yeah. 25 past, okay. If you take your seats, please. 25 past to soon become half past. Thank you. Councillor Hardman, are you ready? Do you wish to accept the amendment or not?
Mr. Chairman, Councillor Darby and I are happy to accept the current amendment.
So it now becomes
So the amendment becomes the standard motion. Yes, the motion, and we will now talk to the substantive amendment, which was the amendment. Councillor Kate Bold.
To say, we would like to amend the newly amended motion.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Fold. I believe that the monitoring officer has not had sight of this
So
yet.
that's right.
So we're going to have to have a adjournment while the monitoring officer validates it to make sure it's
So what would you like me
acceptable.
to do? Just to hand,
Just hand it on.
the word? Okay.
So we'll have another adjournment for 10 to. We take 20 minutes. Okay.
20 minutes.
10 to 4.
Adjourn, 5 minutes.
Thank you, members. The last amendment is not been validated, so we now move back to the original amendment, which became the substantive because
Chair, point of order, clarification. Why has it not been validated?
No, it was invalid. Not that it wasn't validated. We don't know what it was.
Okay, thank you. If the monitoring officer wants to say a few words.
Yeah, so the Constitution says that a motion to be valid, it must not seek to alter or reverse any executive decision. I've got in my hand here the executive decision, cabinet decision made on the 15th of December in respect of this matter. So it alters it. So it would be invalid.
Thank you, members. Well, let's move on. We're at 10 past 4. We've only got an hour left to debate this or move on to the second motion. The floor is now open to members to speak to the amended motion, which is now the substantive.
Yes.
Are there anybody wish to speak? Councillor Martin.
I propose we go to the vote.
Does that find a seconder? Yep. Does anybody wish to speak? Councillor Payne.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can I just first of all say thank you to the monitoring officer and to officers. I appreciate that the circumstance in which the final amendment was put was not easy, and it wasn't easy for everybody across the chamber. I fully accept that the ruling that the monitoring officer has given her word's final, and I think she's presented a reasonable rationale for it. Let me just say, because there was obviously a private conversation outside, we were seeking to just do two things in the amendment, notwithstanding the decision that has been made. One, to remove the word possibility around auto-enrolment, because we think the principle of auto-enrolment is really important and we need to move swiftly to do that. And the second thing we were seeking to try and do was to reinstate or strengthen the food clubs programme, which we accept is a broader part of the County Council's strategy for food redistribution. The leader, in good faith, and I think it's fair to say Councillor Taylor, and I hope I'm not paraphrasing, subscribe to the broad principle of the conversations we're having outside. I think there's an acceptance that there was difficulty and disagreement around how the food clubs work in certain areas. But I just make this point. Obviously, we don't want the wider issue around free school meals to be lost. I suspect, therefore, our group will support the amended motion. Can I just implore the Leader of the Council and Councillor Taylor on the record to do what you can within the executive function, i.e. as cabinet members, to strengthen the food clubs programme. The point Councillor Welsh made earlier was in good faith. We're not interested in making a partisan point about this. We recognise some food clubs are still in existence in places like Mansfield, but we're just simply making the point that in other areas of the county, communities would benefit from that programme being strengthened. So I'm just making that point on the public record and asking whether the Cabinet could take that forward in a time and in a manner that obviously fits governance arrangements and the funding that is required. But thank you to the monitoring officer and officers for the way they engaged in the conversation. I appreciate it wasn't straightforward.
Thank you, Councillor Payne. Any other members wish to speak to this motion? If not, the batting order now is that Councillor Bradley may speak to it, Councillor Darby, then Councillor Pugh Harden. Okay, Councillor Bradley.
Thank you, Chairman. Very briefly, I appreciate the points you make, Michael. Obviously, there is broad agreement among all of us that we want to do everything in our power to support children who need help to get help. And if there are ways for us to take that forward, whether that's relevant to food clubs or anything else, then of course we will talk to, we will meet with you and we'll discuss that and we'll look at ways to do that. We're open to anything that supports disadvantaged children around our county, of course. I think, and I hope aside from that, the motion that we've agreed, the motion that I'm grateful Ashford Independents have accepted, or amendment that they've accepted, allows us to go away and consider some of those things, allows us to look at what is valid and reasonable and legal in that space, and we have made that commitment. We'll make that commitment to work through that process and to make some changes and improvements if that's possible to expand the availability of help to those children. So hopefully that's a point that we can all agree on, and after a significant period of not conversation about it in this place, hopefully we can get that voted on and move to the next decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bradley. Councillor Darby, unfortunately, didn't reserve your right to speak because you've already spoken, so we move to Councillor Pugh Harden, please, to sum up. Thank you.
Chairman, I won't labour the point the excellent points made by Councillor Payne and Councillor Bradley. I'm very pleased that I tapped into what clearly is a tremendous sense of consensus around the chamber, and it's probably demonstrated more than anything else some of the better aspects of our work. So thank you. Go to the vote.
Thank you, Councillor Pure Harden. We will now move to the vote. All those in favour of the motion, please show. And I think that's unanimous. Thank you very much, members, because that is a very important motion to a very good debate, of course. Thank you. Right, motion 2 has been withdrawn. And so we were pleased to know motion 3, Councillor Henshaw may now address us.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, as I missed out earlier on, I presume you're going to give me a bit of leeway in moving this motion. Give me a little bit extra time. You know, did you say I got 20 minutes, Chair? Oh, that's great. Anyway, before I start and move this motion, I'm going to precede it by saying this motion does not in any way, shape or form have a go at any of our police service, our police men and women, PCSOs, who do a fantastic job protecting the people of Nottinghamshire. And I know the police in other areas have their problems, which are rightly being investigated. But from our point of view in Nottinghamshire, this motion does not criticise individual or the police service in general. But when looking at crime in Nottinghamshire, I found some interesting facts on the establishment of the Safer Nottinghamshire Partnership, which members will remember. So I'd like to share them with Council. This partnership was established in 2008 under new crime and disorder regulations brought in by the Labour government. Tablet time. Its main aim was to bring agencies together and to work with communities to tackle crime and antisocial behaviour in local areas. And in the first 3 years in Nottinghamshire, it was fairly successful. Oh,
That is a fine for the chair of the charity council.
Anyway, sorry, I digress. I'd like to quote an update from the Safer Nottinghamshire Partnership from 2012, after 13 years of Labour government investment in tackling crime since 1997. And this is the direct quote. Overall crime levels in Nottinghamshire are their lowest, or at their lowest level for 30 years. I also have the facts and figures to back this up. The reductions over 3 years from 2008-9 to 2011-12, 2.5 of those 4 years under the last Labour government are as follows. All crime down by 35%, Labour getting things done. Serious acquisitive crime down by 53%, Labour getting things done. Domestic burglary down by 56%, Labour getting things done. Theft from vehicles down by 52%, Labour getting things done. Robbery down by 51%, Labour getting things done. Criminal damage down by 47%, Labour getting things done. Violent crime against the person down by 26%, Labour getting things done. Total recorded crimes down by nearly 24,000 offences. Under Labour, we got things done. Right, now let's contrast those figures with exact same measurements after 13 years of Conservative austerity. Let's see where we are today. According to your own Conservative government's figures published in February from September 21 to September 22 in Nottinghamshire, all crime up by 15%. Conservatives not getting anything done. Serious acquisitive crime up by 22%. Conservatives getting nothing done. Domestic burglary up by 5%. Conservatives not getting anything done. Vehicle offences up by 13%. Conservatives getting nothing done. Robbery up by 33%. Conservatives getting nothing done. Criminal damage and arson up by 12%. Conservatives getting nothing done. Violence against the person up by 14%. Again, Conservatives not getting anything done. Total recorded crime up from 43,843 in 2012 to 103,599 annual recorded offences. So under the Conservatives, who get nothing done, the people of Nottinghamshire, crime has gone up. Right, so I don't want to hear any more excuses from members opposite. Right, so let's bring it down and only on to Mansfield West, the division that I represent. Right, in the last 12 months, and these are from the police force statistics, so I'm not fact checked them, but presumably because they're on police site, they should be okay. Right, in the last 12 months, according to the latest police force data, there have been 3,453 crimes reported in Mansfield West in the last 12 months. 1,127 violent and sexual offences, 469 antisocial behaviour offences, 446 shopping offences. Shoplifting, not shopping, shoplifting offences. Of those, 3,453 crimes reported in the last 12 months, over 80% led to an unsatisfactory outcome. 1,173 ended with no suspect even identified. 1,161 ended with not being able to prosecute the suspect. 81.2% ended either unsatisfactorily outcome or with no explanation. So I recommend, I'm not going to read all of the motion because obviously you've all had plenty of time to read it, and you take the tenor of the motion that I put before council today. All I would say is, surely it's in all of our interests, each individual member in this chamber, to try and help reduce serious and violent crime. And it's also in our interest, in everybody's interest in Mansfield West, everybody's interest in Oak Tree Lane, where I represent as a district council, to raise the confidence in our police, to work with the police to get things done. From our perspective on the Labour benches, we want more visible policing, faster courts, higher standards, and ultimately criminals brought to justice. Because if you've got criminals roaming around all over, it does none of us any good. So therefore, we must ensure that people who have committed the crime do the time. Given that, it seems, I hope, that members opposite will support this motion, and I recommend it to council. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Henshaw.
We're in time, Chair.
To second it. And Councillor Mike Pringle, please, to second the motion.
Second the motion, Chair, and reserve my right to speak.
Thank you, members. It's now open to the floor. If anybody indicates they want to speak, Councillor Barnfather, please.
Thank you, Chairman. We have an amendment to the motion. Can we circulate it?
Councillor Barnfather, would you like to move the amendment, please?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. probably no surprise that we were going to put an amendment to the motion, but I hope if you've had an opportunity to have a look at it, you will see that there are actually very few changes. In terms of the actual motion part of the bundle, the recommendations are exactly the same. They remain unchanged, and in principle, we support those recommendations. It's the data and information that you choose to use to support your argument, which in fairness is more of an introductory speech than it is part of the motion. So let's talk about lies, damn lies and statistics, because unfortunately that's the sticking point for us. It was interesting to listen to your presentation, Paul, because you used statistics in your presentation, the verbal presentation, which are quite different to the statistics that are actually used in your written motion. And it's interesting that in your verbal presentation, you refer, I think, to February of 23. In your written presentation in the book, you use dates of September to September. Now, I'm not doubting the accuracy of the figures that you present before us, but which is why I come back to lies, damn lies, and statistics. In the calendar year, we go from January to December. In financial years, we go from April to March. In education, we go from September to September. And you've chosen to go from September to September for your figures. I cannot say I would have done exactly the same if I was presenting your motion, because the facts in that period of time support your motion more perhaps than the facts that they do currently. But much of what is in that introduction is a bit meaningless, because we talk about percentage increases. If I had 2 offences last year and I had 3 offences this year, I've had a 50% increase in offences. The fact that everybody else has 50 offences is immaterial. I've still had a 50% increase in offenders. And this is where lies, damn lies, and statistics come into it again. I could say that Notts County is the most successful, highest rated team in the city of Nottingham. And I, of course, would be absolutely factually correct, as Councillor Kerry will attest to. I may have a difference of opinion here from Councillor Adams, who will say, but what about Nottingham Forest? But of course, Nottingham Forest is not in the city of Nottingham. So I'm factually correct, but I'm totally misleading. That is the reality of some of the statistics which are contained within the motion that's before us. So making use of those statistics, unfortunately, undermines what I think is actually a very valid motion and sensible recommendations. Your starting premise is that on the 27th of February, it was reported that Nottinghamshire was named one of the most dangerous places to live in the UK for crime. Okay, I've got a copy of that headline, I think, from the Post. It's actually qualified somewhat, because Nottinghamshire is actually 18th in terms of reported crime per head of population, 18th in a list of 42. And if you actually look at victim crimes, it's 22nd in the list of 42. So arguably you could say it's a dangerous place to live, but it's certainly not the most dangerous, and in the context of wider crime statistics across the region, it figures pretty well. In fact, if you actually look at the figures for surrounding forces for us, for surrounding areas, just bear with me a second when I find them, you'll see that Nottinghamshire sits somewhere in the middle. So we have Derbyshire with less recorded crime than us, we have Lincolnshire with less recorded crime than us, we have South Yorkshire with significantly more, and we have Leicestershire with significantly more. Nottinghamshire is firmly mid-table in terms of being a crime hotspot. And I'm always very, very concerned when we use terms about being a dangerous place to live. You know, I served in the force at a time that my colleague here, Councillor Camilleri, said the police were rubbish. I think he referred a little bit earlier in the debate this afternoon. Yeah. And I'm pleased that your reduction in crime occurred obviously just after I retired. So I've obviously played a significant part in it. But the reality of it is that Nottinghamshire is not a hotspot. We had a reputation in the early 2000s of being Shottingham, because we had some Category A murders involving the use of firearms. we had parents who were choosing not to send their children to universities in Nottingham, University of Nottingham, Nottingham Trent University, because of media speculation about Nottinghamshire being a significantly dangerous place. We must not go down that road again. So I actually agree with the recommendations. I think it's absolutely sensible to be out there, that data is accessible to all members of the public. It's not just politicians, but to all residents. But I dispute the figures that you actually used to support it. So hence the amendment. Thank you, Chairman, for your forbearance.
Thank you, Councillor Barnfather. Councillor Mike Controner to second the motion, please.
Yeah, second that, please, Mr. Chairman, and reserve the right to speak.
Thank you. Councillor Henshaw, do you accept the motion or do you want to adjourn to get things done?
With my lead, I think we need an adjournment, Chair, if you don't mind. You're right, I'm campaigning at 5:30, so.
Be back for 22, please.
How long?
Thank you. We're a minute before 22, so I appreciate the Labour group for coming with a decision. Councillor Henshaw.
Thank you, Chair. After full and frank discussions, we've decided to accept the amendment.
Thank you very much for that. Members who indicated to speak on the motion. Councillor Kerry.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I wasn't going to speak, but I was listening intensely to Councillor Henshaw's speech, impressed by his passion. But I just wanted to reflect on the period he was talking about. And we also have in the room Councillor John Clark and Councillor Guilfoyle, who I think at the time, in about 2009, when I was first elected and sat on the police authority, that Nottinghamshire, we went to the first meeting and we looked at all the stats and the data, and they were showing that their performance was improving. And I asked a question at my first ever meeting, said, well, how do we compare to all the other forces? Oh, Councillor Kerry, we're bottom of the league in terms of police crime statistics. So up until 2009 in Nottinghamshire, I'm afraid to say that Labour was not getting it done. Thank you.
Councillor Clark.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I thought we'd reach some sort of consensus. That, and Chris will tell you that, it's the most difficult time for Nottinghamshire Police. Past leaders of the Met Commissioners, etc., all said what you've got here is the problems of a metropolitan force or area being dealt with by the county police force. And it wasn't Labour that did that. It wasn't the Tories who did it. There's a lot of bad people. If you look at it, we only missed one, I think, Chris, didn't we? And that's still outstanding. The rest of them are banged up or have been banged up. And I'm proud of that record. What I would say, and the reason really I've got up is to, refute some of that, is to say before, I agree with this going through, but what can we do to actually support the police? We've seen all this stuff that runs across the headlines about the Met. The Met with what, God knows how many, tens of thousands of people. They're not all bad. They're doing a very difficult job. And you'll know yourself, since COVID's been on, people are more and more aggressive to politicians, to doctors, to nurses, to ambulance workers, to everybody like that. They have to deal with it every day. They don't go out to get shot, stabbed or anything else. They're doing their best and doing an excellent job. And I don't think any government in the future will be able to fund, unless they really put some money into it, to give them protection and the officers to deal with it. What I would say is we ought to really pass with this, supporting our local police force, but keep an eye on the figures. And Chris and I know figures were thrown at us from all over the place, and the Shottingham thing stuck for a while and all that type of thing. But at the end of it, when you look at it, and hindsight is a great thing, when you do look at it, you look at that, what did we do? And it is a we in that case then, Eric, is we did collectively, supported the Chief Constable at that time, whether we agreed with him or not. We actually put away some of the biggest villains these people have had. And when you saw those villains locked up and carried through, and Chris saw more of it, they ate it being banged up. And we need more of that. We need a strong penal system that sorts it out. As it is at the moment, I still think we're pussyfooting around it with those real bad people that are just out there, organised crime, etc. And we've all got it. We've got it. Well, every district's got organised crime at the moment, but it's under the lid at the moment. But those officers of ours, the men and women of Nottinghamshire Police Force, we ought to be proud of. They're really going for it, trying to keep these people down. What we do need is new resources, but what subject in here can we say when we don't need new resources? So I'd say it is difficult. Support what's in there. Figures after the bashing we had, Chris and the rest of us on the police authority and the commissioners getting there, you get used to it. But to face some of those people, and Chris has done it a lot more than I have, but when you've seen somebody run in front of you, threatening you with a gun, seen the officers tackle those people, no thought for their own safety, and you're running behind them or the dogs are with you or whatever, that's the practical experience, then you'll realise what it's like to be a police officer. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Clark. Councillor Carr.
Thank you, Chairman. I should imagine we're going to have to get used to this in the run-up to the next election. The Conservatives saying, "Oh, we're brilliant on crime." Labour saying, "Well, we'll be better." And this. It's a shame that this happens, but it happens. I would like to point out, actually, because it often gets repeated, that austerity started in 2010. It didn't. It started in 2008. So it's been 15 years. I think it's a shame that this trying to outdo each other on crime with regards to punishment, because very often crime isn't as easy as doling out punishment. It's dealing with the problem before it happens. I totally agree with Councillor Clark. We should be, and the police are going heavily for the serious organised crime groups. They should be going heavily for drugs dealers and not necessarily drugs users. And we can use these figures until the cows come home. I mean, 2 examples recently of the silly things that the government are doing, and I really do hope the Labour Party don't follow suit and try and do this. Making nitrous oxide illegal to possess is only going to criminalise people for holding nitrous oxide. It's not going to get rid of the problem. The problem is dealing with the supply of it. It just does not make sense to me. And then the best one, I think, is Suella Braverman, bless her. £1,000 fine for begging. Can anybody else see the problem with that? Where are they going to get £1,000 from to pay a fine? They're begging on the streets. It's just knee-jerk reactions to things that have got much, much complicated reasons why people do this than criminalise them. So a plea, please, to people with regards to crime, don't make it a political hot potato and a political football. Let's address the real problems and why we still have these figures of crime, and not boot around, I'm better than you and I can do it better than you, because it will be in exactly the same place in 10 years' time as we are now. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Carr. Councillor Michael Payne.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The police don't only serve us, they live amongst us as well. And let me start by saying that every single one of them does an outstanding job on our behalf. And everything I'm about to say is not a reflection or criticism of them in any way, shape or form. They both see in their day job, but also living in the communities, feel the impact of a society that at some points feels like it is fraying at the edges. Let me just say to you, Councillor Kerry, Councillor Clark, there were challenges when he was chair of the police authority in Nottinghamshire, sure there were, and they're well documented. We had the highest level of police officers ever under the leadership of Councillor Clark, and I think nobody could question his commitment to the constabulary and his ongoing commitment to the constabulary, and I think it was a relatively cheap point you made. Just in relation to statistics, Councillor Barnfather talked earlier about statistics and statistics. Let's just cut through this debate. Statistics are real victims. And I've knocked on thousands of doors in the last few months, and crime and antisocial behaviour is the number one issue being raised. It is an inescapable truth, and it might be an inconvenient truth, and it might not apply to party politics. In 2021, there were 54,908 crimes across Nottinghamshire, excluding the city of Nottingham. In 2022, there were 62,146. That is a significant nigh on 8,000 leap in the number of people who were on the receiving end of criminal activity that potentially will have left a scar on them for the rest of their life. And I want to take the opportunity to say that I am tussling with this at the moment in the area I represent. The residents who live on Church Lane, in and around St Mary's Church, an historic church within the local area, are night after night witnessing gangs who stand on the park, smashing the children's play park apart, leaving nitrous oxide canisters there, glass all over the recreation ground where people are walking their dogs, graffiti over hundreds of years old church walls, and they are not being apprehended. And those people are ringing me and saying, I don't report anymore to the police, Michael, because the police are not dealing with the problem. Go up the road, Calverton Road, Stockings Farm. There are people smashing the children's play area to pieces and terrorising people, knocking on their doors, throwing stones at people's windows, elderly people living on their own who are frightened. And in spite of representations I have made, and I'm afraid to say here, there is an inescapable truth. We have 8 Tory MPs, not even at the races, our Member of Parliament on these issues in Gedling. We have a Conservative Police and Crime Commissioner, And we have a Conservative Home Secretary who's more interested in dinghies in the Channel than she is in actually dealing with the rank and file issues that live amongst us in our communities. In my area alone, in Gedling, last year, 6,199 crimes reported across Gedling. Caroline Henry told us she was going to be tough on criminals. Tough on criminals? Soft on crime, soft on the causes of crime. More interested in photo opportunities and less interested in dealing with the real issues. 2,000 of those crimes were violent and sexual offences. And people in this room know better than I do the impact that has when you have to deal with somebody who's been on the receiving end of that crime. 1,041 antisocial behaviour offences, leading to people who don't dare leave their front door. And 636 were criminal damage and arson offences that the taxpayer then has to pick up the bill for. And do you know how many of them led to an unsatisfactory outcome, Chairman? Over 2/3 of them. Over 2/3 of those 6,199 crimes led to an unsatisfactory outcome. There's a foreword here from a crime plan. There's a lady on the front, I think her name's Caroline Henry, she's the Police and Crime Commissioner. She says, and I quote, "This is not a partisan document, this is a public document that the taxpayer is paying for, to the tune of an extra 15 quid if you're abandoning property this year. I will be unapologetically tough on crime. It's my vision by the end of the term of my office there will be fewer crimes, greater trust and confidence in the police and criminal justice system, and a stronger and more resilient network of services supporting victims to recover from harm." She also goes on to talk about antisocial behaviour, neighbourhood policing. Anybody who watched Question Time last week and listened to the serving police officer from Staffordshire who said the police are on their face, never mind on their knees, and neighbourhood policing doesn't exist anymore, we should be listening to people like her. And Caroline Henry, by the way, also goes on to talk about one of their big priorities being speeding. The irony won't be lost on people in this room, and it certainly isn't lost on people who are paying their tax. We need, Mr. Chairman, a police force that is proactive, robust, reactive, and a government that takes these issues seriously and stops kicking the can down the road. And by God, let me make this plea. There's a recommendation in our motion that we have a strategic lead on different issues for the Safe Nottinghamshire Board. We've got a strategic lead at the moment, the Police and Crime Commissioner. Do you know what she leads on? Reoffending. The irony won't be lost on people in the room. This is a lady who committed a speeding offence 5 repeated times in the same area outside
Thank you, Councillor Payne. Thank you.
We need a government that's tough on crime and tough on the causes of crime.
Thank you very much. Councillor Callaghan, please.
Well, I'd just like to say in 2007, I was seconded from Notts County Council to the antisocial behaviour team at Mansfield District Council to support the ASB team, the Neighbourhood Watch, the PCSOs and the police, also rather regarding safeguarding for lots of children. We started to see the figures coming down dramatically. Unfortunately, I think we've lost so many resources that we're now seeing an escalation of all those crimes starting to reappear, but there's nobody there that is tackling it. So again, we have got marauding youngsters and older people committing crimes that are not actually facing up to this, and there's no police force able to deal with it because they've been decimated over the years, and we haven't got enough police on the beat or anywhere else. And in Warsaw this weekend, I had a child attacked on the park. It's not my area, but I got called about it. And unfortunately, there was no police in Warsaw on Saturday night. That's a disgrace.
Thank you, Councillor Callaghan. Councillor Adams.
Thank you, Chairman. Just a couple of points from me. Crime fundamentally is the responsibility of the criminal who commits it and no one else. To suggest otherwise is ridiculous. As the leader of Gedling, as the deputy leader of Gedling Borough Council and the leader of Gedling Borough Council sitting in this room today, one of their cabinet members sets the priorities for the police in Gedling. They have a priority setting meeting, in fact. So again, responsibility is not just at the foot of the PCC as you claim, but your own cabinet members have the responsibility to deal with that. So take some responsibility. I know that is so alien to you, taking responsibility for something that you've enabled and delivered. But the reality is you have to take responsibility. When the cruisers were terrorising residents in Colic,
The first report was November. Right, I know because I was there with them. I was there with. Excuse me, I'm talking, not you, son. I'm talking, not you, son. Grown-ups, adults. You know them. Remember them? I'll introduce you to a few. Oh, offended again. What a shock.
Members,
It took till March 2023 until you took action, and a PSPO finally was put into place. I've spoke to residents, I've been to businesses. That's what it's called. It's called Active in Your Community. Again, I'll introduce you to that as well. The first issue was reported in November. That's 4 months before you took action. 4 months. 4 months. Why did it take you 4 months? That's the question you've got to. I'm not talking to you, Michael. I'm talking to the room. And the point is, when it comes down to it, it's all very well to point fingers, which we get regularly now. It's your fault because you can't take responsibility. You're not grown up enough to do that. And in this case, there are parts that create crime. There are criminals that cause it, only criminals that cause it. But there are responsibilities of many parts of this county to deal with it. So standing there and pointing a finger at anybody when part of it is your own responsibility is embarrassing. It is definitely not the right attitude of a leader to not take responsibility. And it sure as hell is not the opportunity or priority of somebody that wants to be a member of parliament for Gedling. I mean, come on. What are you going to do when you've got the big issues to deal with? The big issues, the important issues. When you're dealing with sorting out the actual priorities of crime on a national level, you're going to blame somebody else then. You've got to take responsibility for the part you're responsible for. As a local councillor, you've got to get out, you've got to campaign your area, you've got to work with local businesses like I've been doing to organise restriction to a car park that's causing lots of problems for residents in Colic. You've got to be active, you've got to talk to the police, you've got to report things to the police. The police are incredibly hard working. I'm so glad that has been said in here today because the police are an incredibly hard working force. We've had issues with cross bikers in our area causing mayhem, doing wheelies up and down pedestrian areas, frightening people. What do? Well, we organise getting the police to start reporting, and we've got a reporting line into them. We're working with the local inspector. Guess what? We got some extra resourcing. We found them. And we've made arrests have been made. Work with the police as a community, as local elected members, instead of pointing the finger at everybody else and not taking any responsibility for your own area. Work with the police, encourage your residents to work with the police as well, and then you'll get real change. And then you'll get crime coming down. And also, we've also had assistance, thank you for that, from Operation Rita as well. They did a fantastic Operation Telford, it was called. Extra resource again into our area because it was highlighted, it was raised, and we were working with the police to make things happen. You've got to take responsibility for your bit. You can't keep pointing the finger every time and blaming somebody else. It's not a grown-up way to act. It's not a grown-up way to be a manager. It's not a grown-up way to be a public representative. And as soon as you realise that, you'll succeed a lot better than you currently do. All the best.
Thank you, Councillor Adams. Councillor Wilmot.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I've taken a very much an interest in antisocial behaviour issues with our CPOs in Ashfield. We spent a lot of money over many years trying to develop ways of stopping all of this actions. But one of the earliest things that should be done is an early intervention scheme and getting hold of the problem families and letting them come into our children's centres and be instructed on how they should be, carrying on their lives, because that's the only way you'll do it. But by actually instructing, giving instructions out at an early age, because that's what the problem is. A child of 5 and 6 sees somebody doing something wrong and they think it's right. Oh, that's okay, no problem at all. It isn't right. But we've got to do a lot more early intervention schemes to promote being a lovely, tremendous citizen in Nottinghamshire, because that's what we really need. Can I say the motion before us today? It is grim reading, but to say that Nottinghamshire is reported to be one of the most dangerous places, no, it isn't. That's propaganda by the newspapers, selling newspapers and all things like that. Yes, there is problems. We've got to all admit there is serious problems, but they can be sorted out if we all work together on this. And this Safer Neighbourhood Board has to work together and prioritise whatever needs to be done and make sure that
priority is sorted. There were a number of partnership people on that group that should be working to make sure that they take something away with them on the meeting and get it sorted, not just leave it and think, oh, it's all right. We're not good. Go to the next meeting. We'll just carry on as normal. It's just a talking shop anyway. It's got to be changed and not be a talking shop. It's got to be really substantial. It really has. And let me say that every area in Nottingham is experiencing rising crime, but it can be stopped, and it's got to be stopped. We've got to all work together on this. Forget about the politics on it, because it's useless politics as far as crime is concerned. We've got to get to the nitty gritty of everybody's problems and so forth. And we don't just shouldn't be just getting the criminals and condemning them. We should look at the problems behind it. What are they doing these things for? We should make sure that they get the opportunity to bring their lives together and do better. You know, it's just a very difficult situation. As I say, it's recorded crime has risen by 15%. Yeah, it has. There's no doubt about it, because I see things. I see children, as what someone has already said, doing wheelies and laughing and putting the fingers up and so forth. It's all because they see it happening all over, and it's got to be stopped by, as I say, early intervention schemes. Get some organisation together who can actually go into schools and say to people, this is not right. You're not going to do this. We're not going to let you do this. And that's the only way that you'll sort things out. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Millwat. We've got 3 or 4 more speakers, but I do intend to put it back to the seconder and proposer of the amendment, because we've also got the seconder and the proposer of the original motion to speak as well. So I will give it till 10 past and then we'll cut off. Councillor Martin.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Of course, you know, yeah. So crime's always going to be an issue, yeah. So we had the new PCC promise £1 million in rural communities funding, and I went to the campaign for the PCC when she was offering that funding. And our local beat team came to Selston Parish Council last year, and they asked the Parish Council for funding for a car. And I said to the Parish Council, it's not our job to fund the car, and it's not the District Council's job to fund the car, because they're already spending in the region of 800,000 on community protection as it is. And Ashfield District Council was recognised by the Local Government Association for one of the most improved community service protection officers' tweets that they'd looked at. And the reason it improved was because we put body cams on them. We increased the number up to 14, and we gave them 3 vehicles, and they are in a hub with the police in Ashfield Council building, and so it's an integrated service. They're in the same room as each other. They can talk to each other. So as a matter of fact, in 2021, I've got the figures here. So on community protection services across the county in 21-22, Rushcliffe spent nothing. Right, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. Newark and Sherwood spent 145,000, and Gedlin spent 276, Broxtowe 348, Bassett Law 134, Ashfield 788,000 on supporting the police. That's what you do. In 2018, when we had a car track issue at Junction 27, we passed a motion through our district council for a PSPO, which helped the police, a specific PSPO, which helped the police arrest people if they'd been there more than once. We just put only earlier this year we put a gating order through, so we've got antisocial footpaths through council housing estates and any antisocial behaviour area in wherever particular hotspots in Sutton. We put 8 gating orders and closed 8 footpaths and made lives of the residents much better. We had 1.5 million safer streets fundings, and in Outram Street now there are at least 50 shops with cameras, and they're taken up on the offer of the cameras. You know, and these are the things you can do as a double hatter in your districts without castigating anybody. You can actually do this in your district. You can help your police by using your council to help the police get get what they need to help them do the job better. So when we had antisocial behaviour rising, when the police numbers went down to 1,600 and something in 2017, antisocial behaviour escalates in those village areas because there's no presence. So, fortunately, the numbers of police are rising now, but still in rural areas where there is a lack of visual presence from the police, that's where you get the antisocial behaviour. So we asked the PCC to support our local beat team from that £1 million rural funding to give our rural beat team a car, and she gave them 2 electric bikes, and they still haven't got them yet. And I've still got antisocial behaviour, and I pointed out to our local beat team, and they're browbeat with it because they know what's happening, they know where it is, but they haven't got the resources to do it. And that's where your district councils and borough councils can help the police with those issues. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Martin. Councillor Camerari.
Yes, thank you.
The quicker you are, the more people have a chance to speak. So the quicker you are, the more people have a chance to speak. Switch your mic on, please.
I forget that. In 2007, when you went to Mansfield, I'd been the Public Protection Officer, Cabinet member for 4 years. I brought the crime down by 25%. We'd had wardens. I got wardens put in. I worked in partnership with the police. I got accommodation from the Chief Constable for the work we'd done. District councils working together. I don't know what Gedling's like, but I know that if I become the mayor of Mansfield, one of the important things is antisocial behaviour. Let's get it down. Let's talk about Oak Tree Lane. Oak Tree Lane that Paul goes on about. Poor old Oak Tree Lane. I've been through the mill for many years. It's got no cameras on. It's got a problem with motorcycles, no cameras. You've got one housing officer for Oak Tree Lane and Bellamy Road. The houses are in a right state, which breeds itself antisocial behaviour. There's rubbish everywhere that you're trying to do, but that's been left for years. That's what causes antisocial behaviour. Nothing to do with government policy, money. It's about you working in this partnership. I used to work in partnership with the superintendent of Mansfield. I used to meet him every month. We used to go through the antisocial behaviour level, and we used to work on different areas, and it works. So, yes, it's government's policy. Yes, we know it's important. And I'd just like to say one thing, Paul, that we as a Conservative government have started to take antisocial behaviour extremely seriously, because if you read the papers, I don't know if you still do read the papers, but if you read the papers, we've just got a new policy out to deal with antisocial behaviour. And if you get caught doing antisocial behaviour, you're going to have to clear it up. And that is what Conservatives do. They get the job done. And all I'm trying to say is work together, work in partnership with the police, bring them to the table, because with respect to with police, they work in silos sometimes. You've got to bring them to you, like you have at Ashfield, I would say that, bring them to you and have a plan. I don't know what the plan's like at Gedling, but if you're struggling like you're struggling, I'd be really worried about that. I'd be really getting onto the council to get them sorted out. Get the young kids off the bikes. Do something about it, not talk about it. Do you remember what I said earlier? Labour are good at giving you problems, but they're bad at solving them. They promise so much and deliver so little. And that's what I'm going to say.
Well done.
Thank you, Councillor Connery. I'm going to call on Councillor Mike Controller now, who reserved his right to speak.
Right, right.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Having witnessed the trials and tribulations of Councillor Henshaw trying to get up to speak once in the last 2 or 3 months, I'm not going to pass up the opportunity of twice in a single afternoon. I rise in support of the amendment, and I just want to talk about some of the statistics that have been mentioned, because I've changed what I was going to say quite significantly, but it's quite noticeable that sitting on the Nottinghamshire Police and Crime Panel, some of the numbers that are coming out, where we've had over 100,000, 60,000, are quite different to the numbers that we see in the reported figures by the police to us as a panel. But what's been interesting to me today is that despite the proximity of the local elections, that we've seen quite collegiate activity on 2 motions, 2 important items. So I've been very impressed at seeing that. But as I say, I note the numbers, and I am interested in how they compare. So I'm certainly open to looking at those with other members. And as I say, the recorded numbers that we've been receiving as a police and crime panel, you're indeed right. The recorded neighbourhood crime figures to September 22 for the previous year were up 15%. But what the police record their numbers based upon, they have a baseline for the period through COVID up until March 20. And whilst they're up 20% in the previous year, they're actually 30% down in that baseline figure, which was March 20, as I say. What I will say is that as members, some not unlike Councillor Payne, who read the local press, may be aware, I'm not averse to raising concerns about crime, and I'm not averse to challenging our police and crime commissioner if I feel the need to do so. We have a great police force, and they both have, I believe, and deserve our support. But I will continue to sit on that police and crime panel and try my best to represent us as a chamber and us as a county council. And if people have got deep concerns, I'm all ears. I will listen. I'm happy for you to come to me, talk to me, and if we can agree, we'll put things forward. But I'm happy to listen to members' concerns. What I will say, though, to all members is that it would be very helpful that representatives from the boroughs and districts take up their places on the Nottinghamshire Police and Crime Panel, where they can both challenge and indeed support our police force. Because some of our districts are noted for their lack of attendance. In fact, it doesn't matter, sir. It doesn't matter. Because if you read the minutes of the meetings, you'll find out. And I'm not going to end the conversation on that. But what I will say is I support the motion. I thank everybody for the support.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Troner. Councillor Barnfather, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I'll start where you finished, effectively. Thanks, Mike. Thank you for your contribution. You're absolutely right. Accurate data. We do have a great police force, and I'll come to you right at the end, John, if I may. We've talked several members, Andre, David, all talked about working together. John, it was, my notes here, work together. We've all got a role in it. Michael Adams, absolutely right. Responsibility of the offender, but we have to put a structure around how we deal with those people who do not accept the rules. And resources, always a problem. You're absolutely right. There'll never be enough resources. It's how we use what we have got and what we can afford. Michael, you talked about, I think the most important thing you said was these are not just statistics, they are victims. And I've spent many hours sat with the families, bereaved families, where a father, a brother, a son has been murdered. I've sat with many, many rape victims, a horrific offence to the dignity of that individual. Steve, you talked about stop using the police, stop using this issue as a political football, which is where I come back to John. Because John, I'm sorry, John, you spoke the most sense of anybody in this debate today, myself included. You talked about the pressures that the police have to deal with and take politics out of policing. And I am with you 100% on that. We were on the police authority together. You were the chairman, I was your chair of the finance committee. We took politics out of policing. We worked together for the residents and communities of Nottinghamshire. And that's what we've all got to do, whether it's in this chamber, whether it's at Broxtowe, whether it's at Mansfield, Ashfield, wherever. Take the politics out of it, all do our bit within our communities and support our police who are doing a phenomenal job in the most trying of circumstances. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Barnfather. Councillor Pringle, you reserve your right to speak.
Thanks, Chairman. Firstly, let me thank Councillor Barnfather and Councillor Henshaw for being quite grown up and coming to a resolution for everybody in this that we can all relate to. I am going to use just one of the figures, Chris, because it's frightening in the fact that from Newark and Sherwood's point of view, over the period of time, whichever September to present, we had an increase of 41% in sexual offences. Okay. Now, the vast majority of those were against dominant men on vulnerable women. That cannot be acceptable at any stretch of the means. Now, I know the police are working incredibly difficult to make things change. We all know that. We all go out with a police, we'll do night shifts, we'll work them, whatever. We all understand the difficulty that they are on. But there has to be a fundamental reason why we are seeing this rise, and we must be reactive. And unfortunately, in the modern day politics as we are, the reaction tends to be increased funding to increase visibility on the streets. That would be a positive to reducing that figure. I'm sure we would all agree. Parochially, I'm not going to go through all the figures because of the time that we have. But out of all of the suspected issues that came up in Ollerton over the last 12 months, which were many, I will assure you of that, only 2 people have received fixed penalty notices. So in respect of the value of the efforts that our police put in, we must also be looking at a positive response for their efforts in taking these people or putting something forward to restrict these people that are creating them in the courts. And that tends to be a failure, more often than not seen throughout the efforts of the police. I had 1,700 ASB crimes reported in Ollerton over the last 3 years, of which 85.7 of them crimes reported ended up with no suspect identified. And again, that's not because the PCSOs don't know who it is, because they deal with them every day. It's getting the courts to respectfully respond to the evidence that's available to those police when they produce them at court. There has to be a change in the way that modern ASB is responded to in courts, and I think that's something else that we could probably drive forward here, to be quite honest. The amendment, I'd have loved the figures to stay in, Chris, for obvious reasons, but the 18 out of the 42 puts us basically smack bang in the middle of the worst areas nationally. We need to change that, actively change it. Yeah. However, I haven't got the answers, but there must be something that we can do. And if it is, I think Councillor Barney possibly needs to have a chat with members on his side that to become a party of enjoyment and love and all of that, because I think there's been some things said today that are soapbox politics, and Eric's 15-year-old comment that did nothing to do with an amended motion today for the people of Nottinghamshire, to be quite honest. But being smack bang in the middle of the dangerous area for crime is not where we want to be, for Christ's sake. None of us want that. Irrespective of what colour we are, if we can't work together on reducing this, there's something sadly wrong with us. For me, the most important thing on the motion that's put forward, and again, I've got to praise Councillor Henshaw for his work on this, along with James, who's not here with us now. But the final point, to ensure that all past and future SMB, CSA annual review reports are published online and easily accessible to Nottinghamshire residents via the Nottinghamshire County Council website. We have to engage so people know. That point ticks 1 million boxes for us all. Yeah, Chairman, I fully support the motion, applaud the grown-up work between the two councillors involved, and I hope that the whole chamber will support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pringle. Councillor Henshaw, would you like to sum up?
Thanks, Chair, for bringing me in. It's been interesting listening to what members have got to say in relation to the motion that was amended. I mean, you can take the statistics and the figures out, but there's still a problem. And I think everybody in the chamber realises that there is a problem. And until the police are funded sufficiently, then that problem will be ongoing, and we'll all be adjusting the seats, the deck chairs on the Titanic. So we've got to make sure that one, we do work together. And I quite agree with my friend Councillor Camilleri. Although I sometimes have a bit of a difference of opinion with him in relation to his tenure as the crime cabinet member for crime and community safety on Mansfield. I mean, obviously, he wore a different political hat then when he was an independent, and you know, it's in everybody's gift to change the political views if they want to. But he mentions Oak Tree Lane. Well, he said I've just got a camera installed up there. After working with the local beat officer, who I meet with regularly, and discuss issues. Now, a lot of the problems up there, and I presume the problems are what most of us face, are low-level crime, antisocial behaviour, but nevertheless, it is a problem. I mean, Councillor Gallagher mentioned the issue in Warsaw. Well, in Mansfield West, sometimes we have problems with antisocial behaviour, and we've got a camera on the shops on Ladybrook Lane, but when we try and get a response from the PCSOs that have been reduced, then they don't come because they've been drawn from the estates into the town centre. I'm not saying that's wrong, because presumably the town centre is where the majority of antisocial behaviour at weekends occurs, but it doesn't make any difference. It's still a problem for the people on the estates. And all this low-level crime is the bane of people's lives, and we need to address it. Now, nobody's mentioned the reduction in the police numbers. Now, admittedly, over austerity, thousands of police officers were removed. Now, some took early retirement, and some took redundancy. Fair enough. But now they've made a commitment to increase the numbers of police, which is fair enough. That's what we want. But the consequences of having those police officers removed over those 10 years has been horrendous. And none of you on that side of the chamber can really be happy with the performance of the Police and Crime Commissioner that we've got at the moment. You know, I mean, there are issues in relation to that in our community. Community policing is very valuable. Community policing, working with the communities. I have the police on Oak Tree Lane come into the schools. They talk to the kids and try and get some interaction. Now, Councillor Martin, you know, I totally agree with what you said, but I think crime and disorder will always be an issue, but we've got to make sure that the police are funded correctly. And I don't think, Andre, you're going to have a chance to do a lot about crime in relation to them, because I don't think you're going to get elected, but I could be wrong there, so we'll see. So let's all work together. That's refreshing. Now, in relation to Councillor Kerry, I don't agree with some of the points that you raised, but there we go. Councillor Clark, when he was chair of PCC, he had very difficult situations, and I think they worked through the problems. And as Councillor Barnfather says, they took politics out of crime, but made sure that the issues were sort of done in relation to how our police and the communities were policed. So, Councillor Payne, personal experience. Crime and low level crime, as you quite rightly say, is very important to people, and we need to address it in all its forms. I've just had a meeting with the local the sergeant up in Oak Tree Lane, which I'm a district councillor for, in relation to theft of bikes. They brought this scheme out where there's an electronic device. You take the seat off the bike, you put the electronic device in. The police record it on an electronic device. Then if that bike's ever stolen, they scan it and they know whose bike it is. And, you know, those sorts of issues. People working together in the community. Fantastic. Anyway, I mean, I could go on a lot more about various issues, but I just hope that we all support the motion. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Henshaw. We now come to the vote. All those in favour? That looks quite unanimous to me. Okay, all right. That brings us to the end of the meeting, but I'd just like to say, as being my last meeting as chairman, for a full council meeting. I thank you for the respect you've given me and given each other during the debates we've had here. I haven't had a stand up once. I haven't had to use the gavel once, which is quite disappointing to me actually. But I do think, I mean, there is passion in this chamber because that's why we're here. We're here to represent the people in the county of Nottinghamshire and make County Nottinghamshire a better place for the people we represent. So I know passions run high, but I do believe we've had a good debates over the past year. I admire everybody's debate passion for doing so. I'm proud of you all, and I wish you luck in the next year. Thank you. And I will say one thing. It's the first. Thank you, members. That's. I will say a few words at the beginning of the next meeting, but it's been a great pleasure to be the chairman of the Nottinghamshire County Council for the last year. Thank you.